Ah, good morning, good morning, good morning. It is currently 2:18 a.m. and today's date is the 16th of November 2024. Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. I am back here today. Um God is great, God is good. I am thankful to God. I am grateful to the King of Kings. You know what time it is. Yeah. So I am back here, another day, another live stream. I told y'all we're gonna be here every single day, even if sometimes it's hard to come here, but I find the strength somehow to come here. And all of that is just based on God's strength in my life. And yeah, I am here. I am here. I am here. Okay, man, I just want to say you guys, I hope everything is going good for you guys over there in your cities, in your states, wherever you are, in your home, in your family, um, in your church, whatever, however you live your life. I hope everything is going good for you. And I pray for you, everything is going to keep going great for you. And if things are not going great for you, whoever is out there that things are not going great for, pray for you, man. Things are going to be good for you and your family. It may not be as quick as you wanted to. It may be quicker than you think it would be. Just keep it in mind that God got you. You're not alone, and it's not just you going through a lot of stuff. Everybody has some sort of issues they're going through, and then we just try to make the best out of it. Right? All right. The title of today's stream is "Your Time is Limited. Create your own story." I just feel like today I just want to talk about something that really touches my heart, which is time. Some of us, we take time for granted, including me. I take time for granted so many times. It's like you think you have time, but it's like you really don't have all that time that you're thinking you have, because if you think about it, I am turning 30 next year. I'm 29 now. And it's like if you really do the math, half of my life has almost been lived already. Because 30 years from now I'm going to be 60 years old or going to be 60 years old. So it's like, I mean, at 60 years old, I mean, people like Donald Trump, who I really respect and admire, he's 78 years old and he's just been elected the 47th president of the United States. You know what I mean? But not everybody's gonna have that opportunity or that longevity of time. You know what I mean? So don't waste your time. And even the legend, the Don, the 47th president elect, he has been living on the highest level at 30 years old back in the days. You know what I mean? So get up, do what you got to do for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, for the people who believe in you, for the people who don't believe in you, for your society, for your community, for yourself. You know, do what you have to do and don't waste your time here. Do not waste your time here. You never know. You never know when it's going to be over, guys. You just never know. So don't waste your time right here, you know, thinking about the past or wasting your time on things that you could have done or not uh, done, and things that you decisions you could have made and decisions you missed or opportunities that you missed. Don't waste your time doing that. Okay, just focus on the things that you can work on, which is you today, tomorrow. Yesterday is history. Today uh is the present, and the future is mystery. So don't waste your time thinking about the past. Think about the present, which is today, right here, right now. You and I having this conversation, or me talking to the camera. And then tomorrow is mystery. We don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. So The mystery, we don't know what it is, but we do know we're here right now. So let's take advantage of that. Let's be grateful. Let's love one another. Let's inspire each other. And let's do what we got to do and be great. Okay. God bless you so much for listening. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for liking the live show. Man, yeah, I just that was something that I wanted to share with you guys because I am going through a lot. However, I am grateful to the God of heaven. Okay, I'm grateful to the God of heaven. All right, I am so grateful, and God is great. Okay, God is great. Okay, so general updates, guys. General updates. So here we are. Hear what swing voters think about Trump, Elon Musk, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, and all of those speaks that Trump has been naming, man. Everybody's going bunkers like, "Oof, why is this guy choosing these names?" But these are the names he's always said he was gonna pick anyway. I don't know why people are acting like they're so surprised. He said these are the people he was gonna pick from the gate. I'm not surprised. I don't know why people are surprised.
This was Donald Trump's third time as the Republican nominee, but of course, this election was different because not for the first time, actually, he not only won the Electoral College, but he also won the popular vote. Sources say this has given him a different mindset compared to when he first entered office in 2017. Trump's campaign advisor, Jason Miller, telling CNN last week that winning the popular vote, quote, changes everything.
They would say he didn't win the popular vote, and we won the popular vote by records now, which nobody can say that anymore about us. Won the White House, recaptured the Senate, and now, as of today, recaptured the House.
But some swing voters participating in a focus group conducted in partnership with Axios expressed some hesitation about Republicans controlling both chambers of Congress and the White House. Watch.
I don't think we need one party to have control over everything, because at that point you just have a bunch of yes men and women, and we need those checks and balances so stuff that shouldn't get passed doesn't get passed.
Exact same. No, there's no balance.
Joining us now, Axios senior contributor Margaret Talev, who has been working on these types of focus groups for the last couple of years. Margaret, good morning. Thank you for being
Casey.
here. What did you learn from these voters about what we're in for here and how they feel about it?
Yeah, I love these focus groups. They're so insightful, and these were no different. This panel was actually selected before the election, so we were interested to find out how they actually voted. But the pattern for those swing voter panels have been people who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and then went to Joe Biden in 2020. What would they do? Well, we found out that these 14 panelists from across the battleground states, about a third had gone back to Trump, about a third stuck with the Democratic ticket, in this case Kamala Harris, and then the rest of them did third-party candidates. So they're really a divided group, but what we heard uniformly from them is that the economy is their driving concern, and that's what they want the president to focus on. They don't want him on a retribution tour. They don't want him blowing up every sector of the federal government and all the institutions that they know and that they use. But most of them believe that he probably will try. And these were really, really interesting nuances, you know?
For sure. And I mean, and the piece about balanced government, I mean, I do feel like I hear that a lot when I'm out on the campaign trail. People will, have strong feelings about who they want the president to be or to not be in many instances, but they will frequently say, oh, I believe in divided government.
Yes,
right?
We even saw some people split their votes that way because they're like, well, the Democrats are probably going to lose the Senate. You could vote for Trump and vote for a Democrat, or you could vote for Harris on the ticket and vote for a Republican lower down.
Right.
For exactly that reason.
Yeah, really interesting. So you also spoke to these voters about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who we learned yesterday is going to be Trump's pick for HHS secretary. Let's watch what they had to say about that.
He's asking a lot of really intensely good questions, and it's about time somebody asked some good questions.
I just question if he's really going to, focus on the health of the American people versus his own political ambitions.
I just personally think a lot of his policies are rooted in gut feelings and anecdotes and not science.
So a pretty wide range on RFK there. What else did you hear?
Well, so we asked these voters about a couple of different figures, and RFK was one of them, and Elon Musk was the other, and we can talk about him in a second. But there was actually less knowledge, believe it or not, about kind of the whole idea of RFK entering the incoming administration as there was around Elon Musk. Everybody, almost everyone on this panel was keenly aware of the very close relationship and advisory role that Musk seems to be playing in the president-elect's team. Among RFK, there was some understanding, but not as thorough an understanding. And among the 5 or so who really had thought about it, one thought it was a good idea and the others thought it was a bad idea. And it was exactly what you heard there, that the one who likes the idea of RFK says he actually has a lot of interesting ideas. He would be engaged in healthcare in ways that other secretaries haven't, and he couldn't do a worse job than other people have. And the other 3 are like, no, he definitely could. They were concerned about the fact that his own family has kept a distance from him, that they're concerned about anti-vaccination threads or conspiracy theories or some of those other elements. So I think you see a mixed view with him. On Elon, I'll tell you, there is almost universal, nobody thinks it's a good idea for Trump to be that close to Elon Musk. Some think it's actively a bad idea, and the other half or so are like, we don't really know what our opinion is, but we don't think it's a good idea.
Did they say why?
That they didn't elect him. They elected, some of them elected Trump, and some of them didn't vote for Trump. That he's not elected, he shouldn't be that empowered or have that much access. And also that because he's the world's richest man and a multi-billionaire, they really question what he's trying to get out of it. Would he be making moves that would reduce regulation of industries where he stands to gain? Most of them just thought, what's his motive? And why would he be empowered to have this role? They were really not comfortable with it.
That's really fascinating. All right, Margaret Tallow for us this morning. Margaret, so grateful to have you. Thank you so much for being here. All right, let's turn out of this. Donald Trump picks Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, as we've been discussing.
We want you to come up with things and ideas and what you've been talking about for a long time, and I think you're going to do some unbelievable thing. Nobody's going to be able to do it like you, and boy, does he feel it in his heart.
Just the latest of Trump's picks for his next administration that will likely test Senate Republicans' loyalty during the confirmation process. Kennedy has notably spread false information about the safety and efficacy of vaccines. Here was a little bit of the conversation I had with him when he was running for president as an independent candidate against Trump. So do you think school children should not be required to be vaccinated in public schools?
No, I would be against mandates at all.
For any vaccines?
For any vaccine.
If confirmed, he will also be in charge of overseeing the Affordable Care Act, Medicare, and Medicaid. Joining us now, Director and Officer of Michigan's Wayne County Department of Health, Human and Veterans Services, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. Doctor, thanks very much for being here. It's wonderful to have you. I'd like to start with just helping our viewers understand what a job like this entails and the sheer size and scope that is under the attention of the Department of Health and Human Services, including over 100 million Americans who get their health care through Medicare and Medicaid, and the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services is, of course, under HHS. Can you give us an idea of what kinds of decisions Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be having to make if he is, in fact, confirmed to this role?
Yeah, Casey, this is going to be the man setting the agenda for everything from what science we pursue to who gets healthcare under critical programs like Medicaid and Medicare, what the ACA will cover. And I just want to give you 3 examples to answer your question. You think about the CDC and vaccine advisory. This is going to be the individual who helps to select who the next CDC director is and what kinds of vaccines we are recommending for children. Look at the NIH and the kinds of science that we pursue, the grants that we give. You could imagine somebody with very serious anti-vaccine views now starting to shut down research on vaccines for diseases that we don't yet have vaccines for. You think about another agency like CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and decisions about what we are going to cover for seniors. And Another one, finally, FDA, Food and Drug Administration. And you think about the kinds of decisions around regulation, around foodstuffs and medications. And this is someone, unfortunately, who has a history of some really questionable views. And it's not whether or not you agree with his views. It's whether or not his views are based in science. Science is the way that we ask and answer questions in our society, a very diverse society. We ask, can we observe whether or not this medication, for example, has real benefits? And unfortunately, this is somebody whose past statements have demonstrated no fealty to science whatsoever, just cherry picking data that unfortunately will comport.
Everybody agrees that the people that were there before didn't do a great job. Everybody agrees on that fact. So it's like, this man has been talking about food and health and all this stuff. Everybody that has been doing the job or that have been doing the job haven't done a great job. So why not? So what's going on with Whoopi Goldberg, guys? What is going on with Whoopi Goldberg?
Hey, we showed you this before we went to break. Now it's happening. Whoopi Goldberg causing problems for a bakery, and now a Staten Island bureau president is speaking. Let's watch.
And I think the bottom line here is after we're going to call up Jill, who has had to endure something that she shouldn't have to endure. These people are up at 3 or 4 o'clock every morning. The sacrifices they've made, the holidays they've missed with their families. To make Staten Island better, they have sacrificed for 145 years. Rutherford B. Hayes was the president of the United States, for God's sakes. And they're still here, and they're still strong, and they're not going anywhere, despite what other people on television have to say. And frankly, the people who defamed the Holterman family should apologize to the Holterman family for making stuff up to suit their needs. Not everybody wakes up every day and thinks about politics. A good business person doesn't care about anybody's politics. So with that, I'd like to call up Jill Holterman Bowers. She deserves 110% support. Jill, come on.
It's a community that I have to tell you, I'm so overwhelmed by the support between finding out yesterday this even happened, getting phone calls, and then people coming in, people from all over just supporting us in every way. We had phone calls yesterday from Alabama. Guy says, I'm going to give you $50, send it to a school, send them donuts, send them cupcakes. The support has been so overwhelming, and I know how hard my family has worked to keep this business alive, and I wish my father was here today to see this. He would never believe it. My bakers come in 2 or 3 in the morning just to have donuts and rolls for everybody to come in and say, we have the best rolls ever. And you know what? It took my whole family. It takes everybody, the community that comes every day to see us. We have this everyday conversation with everybody. How's the family? How's this? This is what makes Holterman's Holterman's. It's the community, it's my fellow everything that come out, and us giving back to the community that makes this go round. And if it wasn't for you and Staten Island to make this work, we still wouldn't be here today. So I know my brother, Billy, work hard. Joe, my baker in the back, is here 6 days a week. He gives his heart and soul to this place. And you know what? My father always said, you do what you love. I'm telling you, this is my heart. And I thank you so much for everybody to come out and support us with the Holterman family. It means the world to me. It really does. Thank you so much. Oh, I wish my father was here today.
Oh, good. So good. The goodness prevails. And just a little background for those who know, they had a boiler here. Again, it's been here 145 years. They had a boiler that was 60 or 70 years old. And the first week in November, guess what? It went on the fritz. They had to be replaced. And the reputation of Holterman's is impeccable, so rather than commit to something they couldn't guarantee, they said we can't do it. And the person who besmirched and defamed them took that as an insult to her. Well, get over it. This family will be here for, God willing, another 145 years. And as Jill said, it's her family, it's the Staten Island community, it's the elected officials. And I hope if you're watching this across the country, go online and order something and we'll mail it to you. So keep coming to Holterman's. I'd like to call up State Senator Jessica Scarcella Spanton.
Thank you so much for putting this together, to our wonderful borough president, Vito Fasella, and to the Holterman family. Jill, give her a big round of applause. I think one thing all of the elected officials have in common is that Holterman's has been around our entire lives. My parents' entire lives, my grandparents' entire lives, probably our great-grandparents' entire lives. This is a staple in the Staten Island community, and one message is clear. You do not mess with Staten Island. That's right. Amen. We come together as a borough like no other, so just understand, Staten Islanders are going to shop at Holterman's. This is an amazing, amazing family establishment. I encourage everybody to get their Thanksgiving pastries here, everything else. Thank you so much for putting this together, and thank you to the Holterman family for giving us a historic, beautiful business for 146 years, I just heard. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm getting old. 146. Councilman David Carr. David.
Thank you so much, Borough President. You know, Vito always stands up for Staten Island, and today Staten Island needs to be stood up for. And we're here today to have Holterman Bakeries back, because the Holterman family generationally has had the backs of this community. Like so many other small business owners, they give back to the community that they call home. They give back to the community that patronizes them. And I'm so glad that we see all the cars here, all the people coming in and out of the store today to send a message to the person who decided that she was too important for a boiler breakdown, that she had to have her pastries, and if it wasn't coming to her, it must have been someone else's fault. It must have been a directed insult to her. That would never be the case. Staten Islanders don't serve people based on their political opinions. They serve everyone who comes through their doors. And that is the case with the Holterman's family. And in case you can't tell, I love a good bakery. And this is one of the best in the world, bar none. My family has been shopping here since I was a little kid. When my mom had to buy that thing on that snack on the counter that was there for company, it wasn't Entenmann's, it was Holterman's that she bought. And I look forward to seeing the Holterman's pastries and other products all throughout the borough for years to come. So God bless you, Jill, and God bless you, your family.
Well, they showed up, right? And who got the party started? Well, that was the borough president, Vito Fasella in Staten Island, and he said these words: "This is the American story." Wow. So what did Whoopi Goldberg try to do to this woman in her bakery? Watch.
The place that made these refused to make them for me.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What? Oh.
No. Let me explain. They said that their ovens had gone down, all kinds of stuff, but folks went and got them anyway, which is why I'm not telling you who made them. But can't be because I'm a woman, but perhaps they did not like my politics.
Yeah. Okay, the boiler was broken. I mean, you could hear the New York City councilman there. They brought everybody to this, to those microphones.
Not political is what they're saying. This is just pure evil by Whoopi Goldberg trying to destroy a family business that's been in business for as long as they just said, just because it couldn't be that she might actually not get a cupcake on her birthday. And because she's such a lunatic, she thinks anything that doesn't go her way is some conspiracy theory against her and that everybody hates her. This is the intolerance of the left. Like, I have no idea how these people voted, but I'm going to guess that some of the people that just spoke are probably Democrats. And thank goodness that they came out, and thank goodness that they said, you don't do this to our bakery. You don't do this to a family business. I hope there's a lawsuit here. I hope Whoopi Goldberg has to pay a huge, huge birthday check to this bakery. They deserve it.
I think ABC's on the hook here.
I hope they pay too then.
Because what we were just talking about, they don't mention Holterman's Bakery, but when you look up, by the way, everybody's Googling this so much now that you just put in 3 letters and it's the first thing that comes up. But when you go, you see they're iconic, those cupcakes.
Yes.
So they're in like every shot of what's being said while Whoopi's, tearing this woman down and accusing her of being politically discriminatory. So my question is, how much on the hook is ABC News? How much on the hook is Whoopi? Somebody is, because According to the law, how does it work?
Yeah, when you look at libel, slander, or defamation, you can't just not say the bakery's name and say, okay, I'm off the hook. I didn't slander or libel anyone here because I didn't say the name of the bakery. If there's a fact that you disclose that could lead someone to infer what you are talking about, you can still be on the hook. And to your point, that infamous, or not infamous, I should say famous, white box with the pink polka dots allowed people to very easily find that this was Holterman's Bakery.
It's so famous it was good enough for The View.
Yes, she chose to unleash, Whoopi Goldberg, to unleash the attack dogs based on what evidence? What evidence led her to believe this was about politics? I've heard none, but thank God this bakery is fighting back.
Well, it's about politics now because, as you said, some of those New York representatives could very well be Democrats as well.
Yeah, but Staten Island is, it's pretty conservative. They're in rare territory in terms of the 5 boroughs of New York City. Great people there. They obviously are very passionate about their environment and their community. And, what is Whoopi Goldberg doing, calling me like, this is Whoopi Goldberg, and I need something custom made for me and my Whoopi Goldbergness
for
now.
Free.
And they might have had those pre-made. So before the boiler broke down, someone, may have made all of those lovely confections, which someone was able to fetch and take to Whoopi on set because, God knows, it looks like she's missed a lot of cupcakes lately.
Man, we just get deeper and deeper. So what is the truth of all of this?
Well, I think the truth is that Whoopi Goldberg is an incredibly self-indulgent person who thinks everything is about her. So she thinks and takes it personally because that's how highly she thinks of herself, and she thinks everyone else regards her in that way, that they would care what her politics are, that they would go to such lengths that they wouldn't make her a cupcake. I'll tell you what this also is, in my opinion, is it's projection and it's deflection. This is what the left does. I've had numerous instances in California and in other liberal places where people didn't want to serve me, or where I got, bad looks, or I felt obviously uncomfortable being in a place because of who I am and what I believe in. I would never call these places out on air. I would never try to disparage them or hurt their business. But I think that she's used to that because she's on the left, and maybe she would do that to somebody. So she automatically assumes that was done to her, but it quite clearly wasn't.
It's real quickly, because you and I had, I think, seen some of the same reporting on this, that The View might be struggling right now with its view.
Yeah.
and maybe they really ought to be more sensitive to the fact that everybody's a part of this country.
The View has one view. They all voted for Kamala Harris. So how about that? You got The View, and it's only one view, and 76 million Americans don't have a voice. So there you have it.
Oh my goodness, Whoopi. Whoopi the legend. Whoopi is a legend, right? You remember the color purple? The color purple. Remember the color purple, guys? Whoopi is definitely a legend. However, it's like, chill. It ain't that, it ain't that important. Just chill, bro. What is going on with AOC and X? Okay. What is going on with AOC and X? She's updating her profile and doing a lot of
New York Congresswoman and progressive superstar, if you want to call her that, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, went viral yesterday. This was after followers noticed that her pronouns were missing from her X profile. So where did they go? Well, 2 years ago, she apologized for not having them, claiming, quote, they fell off. What does that mean? Words don't just fall. But there was no apology this go around at a time when many are blaming gender issues for the Democrats' big election defeats last week, including a New York Times op-ed. It's fascinating. You've got to read it. This was a liberal writer who wrote this, nevertheless, that Democratic voters felt betrayed by the Biden administration. Quote, they resent being labeled anti-trans for questioning whether it's right to simply accept what their children say about their gender, especially since those children often suffer from other mental health issues. Tommy, this writer, Pamela Paul, was fascinating. She goes on to say this, that more than 14,000 American children had gender-related medical interventions between 2019 and 2023. And while much of Europe has been pulling back from gender affirmation model, evidence has emerged that in the U.S., proponents of this approach have let politics color the science. And she goes on to cite a government researcher who had findings that went against gender-affirming care and buried them
And that study was really important, too, because it was to study the mental health impacts on those that were transitioning. And when it turned out that they didn't have positive mental health impacts 2 years down the road, then she wanted to bury that study that we wasted taxpayer dollars on, by the way. But I would also argue that there are many in the United States who are figuring out that this social experiment of transitioning your minor children, it's a failed social experiment with lifelong repercussions. If you ever talk to somebody, and I have many times, who's trying to detransition, they'll tell you their life is hell. They are hooked on drugs for the rest of their life because of the surgeries that they've had, because of puberty blockers, because of any type of surgeries they've done to their bodies. They will forever be scarred from this. So I think now the American people, not just Republicans and conservatives, are starting to take a look at this and say, this was a failed social experiment. We want to distance ourselves from this. It doesn't have anything to do with adults choosing to be trans. You can do whatever you want. But when it comes to kids, the line has been drawn. And I think that that's a great step forward.
It is. And, Seth Moulton Harris, he said this: Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend rather than being brutally honest about the challenge many Americans face. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. He got a ton of backlash for that very lucid, candid remark, Harris.
Yeah.
And here he is on Morning Joe describing that backlash.
The backlash I've received proves my point that we can't even have these discussions as a party. Instead, we have a wing of our party that shames us, that tries to cancel people who even bring up these difficult topics, and frankly, shames voters. This is the same group of people who told us to defund the police, who told us that there wasn't a problem at the southern border, who told us that inflation was transient, whatever that means, and who told us that Biden was just fine. And they're out of touch with voters.
Harris.
Yeah, part of the backlash against Seth Moulton ought to include the fact that he actually voted or did not vote against the Trans Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Great point. He's got more than a sketchy past on whether or not he really believes what he's saying now. He has an opposite voting record for it. So, I mean, everybody's going to flex now from the left. They want to make sure that they're voting with the right people in silence until it comes time to run again, and then hopefully nobody will remember what they've done in the past.
Their votes are was, were, now, like AOC's pronouns, right? Was, were, now?
Yeah.
Just pass.
Harris
over.
with the receipts on a Friday. I love that. Ben, to your point, look, the New York Times interviewed several undecided voters, and one who was 25 years old said she became radicalized when she saw that infamous commercial about Kamala's for they, them, I'm for you. And she said, I don't like Trump, but I voted on the side of normalcy.
Yeah, it was an issue that they went just way too far on. And when you saw the videos that started coming out, Vanderbilt was a great example of this. I think that was a flashpoint for parents when they saw that. And they're like, hey, you have to get on board with these surgeries for children because it makes us a lot of money. And if you don't do it, you're basically going to be excommunicated from the healthcare industry at Vanderbilt. And when those videos came out and people were like, wow, this is not childcare. This is about a guaranteed paycheck for life because of the puberty blockers and all the other expensive drugs. And this was a radical idea from the left. They're ruining kids' lives. They were taking them as experiments instead of actually being good parents and good doctors to these kids. No one should be cutting and mutilating a child under 18, period. And I think we're going to see that change quickly.
And Kennedy, in the post-mortem meeting among Democrats, there were Democrats outraged at Chuck Schumer on this issue. $77 million is what the GOP poured into the trans issue.
So I'm going to push back a little bit because my youngest daughter wants to be a federal law enforcement officer. So I got her a gun and a German Shepherd because that's how she identifies. And I set her loose on the streets of New York City. And she's arresting people left and right because you know what? She's a cop, all right? My child is a cop because she wants to be a cop. No, that's not how it is. And one of the German studies said we have to treat children wholly. We can't just look at this one issue in this one area of identification. It's unkind. We have to look and see what the greater mental health issues are, because for so many kids, it is an epidemic, and we have to treat the mental health first and get them out of pain and the suffering that they are experiencing. And then you can treat the gender stuff non-surgically.
Yeah, Democrats love talking about Team Normal. Well, it turned out that 76 million people saw Team Normal as the right. All right.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. I don't know what this whole situation is with men and women and in between. I just do not know. Okay, RFK Jr. receives unexpected praise from Dems governor. It says make America healthy again.
President-elect Donald Trump is shaking it up by selecting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to head Health and Human Services. Trump is making good on his campaign promise to have Kennedy join his administration to disrupt the Washington norms. Griff Jenkins reporting now from D.C. with the latest. Griff.
And Harris, this may be the least surprising pick after Trump repeatedly hinted that he would enlist Kennedy to help make America healthy again. But already, RFK Jr. getting a harsh reception from some Democrat senators like Patty Murray posting this to X yesterday saying this could not be more dangerous. There's no telling how far an anti-vaxxer and fringe conspiracy theorist like RFK Jr. could set America back in terms of public health, reproductive rights, research, and more. But Kennedy says his skepticism on vaccines is being misconstrued by his critics, offering this explanation on NBC.
I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine. If vaccines are working for somebody, I'm not going to take them away. People ought to have choice, and that choice ought to be informed by the best information.
And he's getting praise from a Democrat governor who was on the front lines during the COVID pandemic, Colorado Governor Jared Polis, saying this: I'm excited about the news. He helped us defeat vaccine mandates in Colorado and in 2019 and will help make America healthy again by shaking up HHS and FDA. Now, among the things we know Kennedy wants to do, if confirmed, address America's health and food habits, put a spotlight on obesity and heart disease, re-examine vaccine approvals, ban toxic chemicals, and cut corporate influences. And for what it's worth, Harris, many of these goals are bipartisan, lest we forget First Lady Michelle Obama led the Let's Move effort to get America more fit. We'll see what happens. Harris?
Griff, thank you very much. Ben, your show is called The Verdict. What's your verdict on this?
I laugh at how they're all freaked out by him, and I just have to read this headline from Politico. This was back in 2008. Obama considers stars for the cabinet. President-elect Barack Obama is strongly considering Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to head the Environmental Protection Agency, a cabinet post, Democrat officials told Politico. So all of these Democrats that are like freaking out, like, oh, he's extreme. We can't have him. We can't trust him. Sorry, shut up. Like, you guys are so filled with hypocrisy. It's embarrassing. I also think that it's shocking how the media is reacting to all the things that Donald Trump said he was going to do that he's actually doing. Like, they can't believe that RFK is actually there. I'm like, did you not see them on stage? Did you not see the fireworks go off when he brought him out there? Did you not see the crowd go crazy? And the same left that loved him, only because he bucked the system on asking questions about the COVID-19 vaccine. And a lot of people took a second look at him. A lot of people that were conservative took a second look at him. And they said, oh, this is interesting. This is a guy that's asking questions. If you go back and look at what he said, he only asked questions and they lost their minds.
Well, look, I remember when he was in our studios and for the first time we sat down, Kennedy, and I asked RFK Jr., are you turning independent or Republican? No, I'm a Democrat.
Yeah.
He's a Democrat. He's very proud of being a Camelot Democrat, and he was hoping that would appeal to more Democrats, and it might have if they had had an honest process throughout the primary season. They didn't want a primary process. So now this is what you're faced with. He touched a nerve with a lot of people, and he got people who weren't interested in politics at all to listen to his ideas.
Good point.
I'm a little upset because when I heard that Kennedy was nominated to be Health and Human Services Secretary, I thought it was me. And I was like, all right, everyone, pack up. We're going to Washington. So I had to call off the dogs. But he is kind of all over the map. He has become somewhat libertarian in the last few years.
That's what I thought.
I hope he remembers what it means to be libertarian, and I'm talking about small L, not the party, because I worry that someone with the collage of ideas that he has is going to use government oppressively, and that's not what we want in terms of our health. It's one thing to be a great role model and a great example. It's another thing to make sure that there is not fraud happening and we are not being actively poisoned surreptitiously. That's one thing, but to mandate what people put in their bodies in terms of food, that is a very slippery slope.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would agree, but I would say I'm really surprised that some on the left are freaking out about this so much, because I believe it's California who has led the crusade to ban certain chemicals, certain food dyes in food, in Skittles, and in other products.
Even furniture.
Right.
When you buy furniture, there are all sorts of, and most of them are coming from California. I don't know, maybe it's a good thing, but that's a lot of stickers.
Right. So I'm really surprised that there are some that are so angry about this, because that is part of his agenda, is to look at the toxic chemicals, the things that are in our food. Why does Europe have better food than us? Why are there things sold here that are not allowed to be sold elsewhere? That's something that moms should care about, parents should care about, that the Obamas should embrace, to Griff's point about moving and healthy school lunches. Why not take a look at these things? And for some, COVID was a religion. So I understand that you're poking at some people's religion when you talk about what happened during the COVID mandates and the vaccines. And I understand that some people are still very sensitive about that because they got so much wrong. But if you have someone who's willing to examine these things, take a look at things, and maybe make Big Pharma a little bit uncomfortable,
Follow the money.
I think that's okay.
I've never seen so many conservatives, by the way, now looking at following the money of Big Pharma and realizing, like, hey, maybe we're actually being taken advantage of. Maybe they want to throw every single vaccine at you to make more money. And we know how much money they made off the vaccines. We also know that doctors were not honest with the American people because they were getting bonuses for how many vaccines they were putting out there. And the American people and mothers will not forget that.
Well, and I mean, the whole thing, and you know, you saw it up close. I mean, the whole thing with the cloth mask. Have you ever seen a surgeon go into surgery with a cloth mask? Right. And so when Fauci kind of, and I think he was feigning it, when he said he wasn't sure about the...
New York Congresswoman and progressive superstar, if you want to call her that, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, went viral yesterday. This was after followers noticed that her pronouns were missing from her X profile. So where did they go? Well, 2 years ago, she apologized for
I think it just went back. Okay.
not having them, claiming, quote, they fell off. What does that mean? Words don't just fall. But there was no apology this go around at a time when many are blaming gender.
Here, RFK has been making news back to back to back to back to back. And it's been a bittersweet experience for a lot of people. However, this is not like new news, okay? This is something he's been saying he was going to do from the gate. This is something he's been saying. Like, Trump has been saying RFK will be his pick. This is who he's going to pick to make America healthy again. I don't know why they're making it seem like this is a new topic.
But the issue here is that a lot of what RFK says does not make sense to the medical community. I mean, the unfounded conspiracy theories, the false claims about science, well, frankly, all of this.
I do believe that autism does come from vaccines. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. COVID was clearly a bioweapons problem. Wi-Fi radiation does all kinds of bad things, including causing cancer. Some of these mass shootings that we're seeing in this country may be related to these new class of drugs, of SSRIs and benzos.
Now, to be absolutely clear, there's no evidence of any of what he's described, but it's got the medical community worried, perhaps for that very reason. Because if RFK gets confirmed, he will oversee the 13 agencies under the HHS, from the CDC to the NIH, the FDA, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. Now look, you heard a lot about this, but no one person is one-dimensional, and that obviously includes RFK Jr. He's gained a lot of support, frankly, for saying that he wants to cut corporate influence in healthcare, which might explain why vaccine makers are also freaking out. You know, their stocks actually tumbled after the RFK announcement. He also says that he wants to improve our food by getting rid of chemicals and also additives. And he wants to make Americans healthier, he says, by combating chronic disease. The thing is, he's got no experience running a vast government department. But for that matter, neither does Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard or Matt Gaetz. Trump wants all of them, though, to break down the bureaucracy that they're being asked to run, which gets me to another saying: don't let your mouth write a check that you can't actually cash. Will Trump be able to do that? Senate Republicans are going to need to confirm these very provocative picks, although some more so than others. And Trump is all but telling those Republicans, go against me if you dare. Joining me now, Democratic Governor of Hawaii, Josh Green. He's also a physician. Also here with us, epidemiologist and director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, Michael Osterholm. Thank you all for being here. Let me begin with you, Governor. Governor Green, you have pretty strong feelings about RFK Jr. as HHS Secretary, particularly after an experience you say you had with a measles outbreak. What happened?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. We had a terrible experience in Samoa. RFK went and rallied that country against vaccinations when there was a measles outbreak. It resulted in the deaths of 83 innocent children. You see pictures of me vaccinating people there. Basically, what he did is he scared that country away from vaccinations. And measles will kill young people. It caused 5,000 additional cases. And I actually was contacted by the Prime Minister of Samoa to come in with a contingent of medical mission workers from my state, from Hawaii, to go and vaccinate people. And we vaccinated 36,997 people to basically stop the measles. But it was too late for 83 children. We went into one village and a child had just died and was still warm. And then we had a funeral service for that child because they died of the measles, and then vaccinated their 7 or 8 other siblings, and then we went to the next village. That's what RFK did. And if he is confirmed as HHS Secretary, what he will do is he will cast doubt on vaccination programs across America. That will mean thousands and then millions of people will consider not getting vaccinated. We will not have herd immunity. And physicians like myself and pediatricians and all sorts of other healthcare providers will see cataclysmic spread of disease. So he is the worst possible choice for HHS, and I hope that the president will pull his name back.
We'll see what the Senate says. I should say that RFK Jr., Governor, said that he, quote, had nothing to do with people not vaccinating in Samoa, and he never told people not to vaccinate, unquote. I know that you have a very different experience, but he has denied those allegations. I do want to bring in Michael in this instance because RFK Jr. has said that no vaccines are safe and effective. He also said that I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccine. Trying to reconcile the two perhaps would be head spinning. But here is what Trump's transition co-chair, Howard Lutnick, says Kennedy really wants.
He wants the data so he can say these things are unsafe. He says, if you give me the data, all I want is the data, and I'll take on the data and show that it's not safe. And then if you pull the product liability, the companies will yank these vaccines right off of the market. Let's give him the data. I think it'd be pretty cool to give him the data. Let's see what he comes up with.
Okay.
I think it's pretty fun.
Pretty fun. Well, people may hear, all right, let him look at the data. Is there any harm in doing that?
Well, first of all, let me just be really clear. The data that he's talking about is unclear to all of us because the data that you need to use to assess the safety of these vaccines actually is already in the public domain. It's not something that you have to request or to take a look at. And this has been one of the problems with Mr. Kennedy's approach to what we call science, in his words, is the fact that he consistently mixes up messages, he mixes up different disease problems, and trying to follow him and understand what he's talking about is often like trying to nail Jello to the wall. And so that's one of the challenges. We can't have that kind of science. You can't agree on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays that gravity works, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays it doesn't. And that's one of the real challenges in trying to direct response back to the kinds of comments he makes.
saying, let me see the data, does imply that it's not readily accessible, which might surprise a lot of people as you're saying that it's publicly available. Well, Governor, let me go back to you because a fellow governor, Jared Polis, said that he was excited, his words, excited by the pick, and that while he's not into banning vaccines, he actually praised RFK for wanting to take on big pharma, for wanting to make food healthier and regulating pesticides. What do you say to those who think RFK Jr. could do some good?
Well, first of all, I was with Jared today throughout the day at the Governors Association meeting. We talked about this. Jared is very worried about what RFK would do over vaccinations. Whether or not RFK gets to do anything else, who knows? But this is a gentleman who has absolutely no training in public health, no experience in public health, nor does he have any experience in biopharmacologic processes either. He is a quack scientist. It is obvious. And Mr. Trump is doing this to be provocative. Now, tearing down government when children's health is on the line is not okay. I was disappointed in Jared, who I love, who is one of my favorite governors, but it is not okay. It's not okay to do what he did, to cast doubt on processes that are well established in science. It makes parents scared. When parents
Yo, bro. He's a quack scientist. Oh my God, these people gonna do too much.
scared, they don't take action. If people freeze and we lose 10 or 20% of our vaccination rates, you'll see disease spread widely across America. And remember, you've got a lot of children who are too young to be vaccinated who will be very vulnerable when these diseases spread. You'll see some polio come back. You'll certainly see outbreaks of measles and mumps and chickenpox. All of these things don't just sometimes kill you, they also will cause serious neurologic damage when children are ending up with infections because they couldn't get immunity. So, look, there's going to be different opinions. I'm the only physician governor in the country. I actually had to cross paths with RFK. He has now lied about what he did in Samoa, where he discouraged those individuals from getting vaccinated. And it's very dangerous. We've seen a lot of this kind of misinformation from the Trump universe on many levels. But this is our children's health. This is not a political thing. This is not Democrat or Republican. This is your kids. And so when Republicans go to vote, I pray that they will not allow this gentleman to be confirmed.
What you describe is so daunting as a mother and obviously a person in this country thinking about the ramifications and just knowing the vaccination process that you go through with your children to go to school and beyond. It's very terrifying, frankly, Michael, to think about what he's described. If you were advising senators for his confirmation hearing, what kind of questioning would you encourage them to focus on?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize the seriousness of the situation. The governor, I think, has done a great job of laying that out. But let me just add one figure to the mix here. We estimate with some really very detailed studies that in the past 50 years of vaccines being available for young children, we've saved over 124 million lives. That is 6 lives for every minute for the last 50 years. So if I were a senator asking questions, I'd want to know exactly what data are you citing to say these vaccines aren't safe? What data are you citing to imply that it's a health problem that's being caused by things other than vaccines? And I think the challenge we have right now is basically making sure that people don't walk away with what he purports to be facts versus what are the real science facts.
A really important conversation and a really important.
Man, let the man do his job. And please let the Senate confirm him. And let him he's promised to make America healthy. That's what he said. He said MAHA, make America healthy again. Compared to make America great again. So it's MAGA/MAHA, according to RFK Jr. So it's like, let him do his work. Let him do his job, bro. Stop trying to fearmonger people. This is what they're good at. They try to fearmonger you into believing this person is going to be a bad choice or a bad pick. So don't let him go in there. The people already doing the job. They're not doing the right job because according to, let me get you the precise one. So, according to Politico, all right? According to Politico, on the 9th on the 28th of January, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. On the 28th of September 2024, California is the first state to banish Fruit Loops from school cafeterias. Blue, green, yellow, and red additives affected by a new ban have been linked to hyperactivity in people who have ADHD. Da, 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 da. This is according to Politico, okay? This isn't me. This is according to Politico. So that means the people there right now, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because if the state has to ban Fruit Loops in the claims that it's linked to hyperactivity in kids, according to Politico, okay? This ain't according to me. You can do the research yourself. So meaning, we need RFK, bro. I don't want to know none of that. Okay, so what is going on with Elon Musk? Shout out to Elon Musk, man. He's been doing what he needs to do, which is make America great again.
If you were to vet that, would you have to do recess appointments? You're saying yes or no?
My view is we want to do this the regular way and give the Democrats a chance to work with us on getting people in place. But if they become obstacles and obstructionists to moving these along, I mean, we're gonna grind them out on the floor of the United States Senate.
The brand new Senate Majority Leader, South Dakota Senator John Thune, speaking on the President-elect's nominees. And to talk about that further, we have Kevin O'Leary Ventures Chairman. Kevin, great to see you as always. So talk to me about this, particularly with RFK Jr. You are a businessman. You're an entrepreneur. How do you think about investing in this space if you have someone like RFK Jr. who comes in and upends the snack space, upends the big pharma space? What does this mean for people like you?
Well, I always try and figure out who is this person, because I think he is going to get through this process. He's going to be the manager of this space. And I think people are saying, oh, he's controversial. Yeah, he is. And I think that's what the space needs. I met him in your green room, just a few yards away from you.
Shameless plug.
When he was running for president. I had no idea what a highly educated guy this is. I mean, he was really interesting. And my take on him is very rational person. He doesn't believe in vaccines. And I have people in my office that are the same way. They didn't take vaccines. I took everyone I could get. We're both still alive. So that's a controversy there. But the thing that I really liked about him, people should think about going through this confirmation process, this guy actually cares about what kids eat. And I'm into that now. I'm into longevity. We eat a lot of crappy food. Mm-hmm. We eat too much sugar, too much salt. This is very pragmatic stuff. So if you're appealing to a mother and telling her, look, I'm not going to ban potato chips. I'm not going to ban sugary sodas, but I want to educate people as to why they shouldn't eat them. And I think that's a great mandate. I'm all for it. Get them in there. Shake it up. I love this idea.
They've certainly appealed to mothers like me, and Jackie for sure is on the same page as I am, too.
Oh, 1,000%. I think that, there was a lot of likability there with women voting for Trump because of some of these potential picks. And it was kind of floated that RFK would be one of them. But, Kevin, while we have you, Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, they are shaking things up in this new Department of Government Efficiency. Gary Cohn was on the Claiming Countdown yesterday, and I thought he brought up a fantastic point. It's been something I've been thinking about. Will they be incorporating AI into this efficiency and not just firing people, but getting machines to do more? Listen to this.
Here's where you're going to get the money. You're going to get the money by making these organizations more efficient. You're going to invest in technology. I don't think the federal government has invested in a lot of technology. I don't think there's a lot of AI in the government. I don't think there's a lot of high-end computing in the government. We're going to use modern technology to make the government more efficient and cut down on the administrative cost. Administrative cost is huge in the U.S. government.
What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I saw that interview. Most people's criticism of this appointment is saying it's just consultants and they're just pointing fingers at waste. No, it isn't. It's different this time. Let me explain why. Elon has his own network, 1 billion people watching him every day. He's the largest contributor to his own network, X, formerly Twitter, as we all know. So here's how this is going to work. Let's say they identify a cost-plus contract. These are egregious contracts. Maybe in Massachusetts, you're building a bridge to nowhere, you're spending $2 billion. He'll focus on that. He'll show you why it's a waste. And then he'll start to shame out Elizabeth Warren or somebody else, to millions of people online, squeezing her head in front of her own voters. I love this idea. Now, it's going to be very contentious. That's the power he has. He doesn't need to have legislative power. He can squeeze from the bottom up. Your senator, your governor, your manager is wasting your money. Here's how. I'm going to remind you about it every day until you make her change. Love it. I love it.
Yeah, the power of a megaphone, Kevin, I think is very real here. I got to ask you about this. So you're our energy guy. I was definitely team Doug Burgum for energy secretary. I thought that would have been great for that space. He didn't get it. He got interior secretary. But as I thought more about that, there's a lot of relationship between interior and the permitting that has to happen to use our natural resources. What do you make of that?
Yeah, look, I'm kind of with you. I was a supporter of Burgum because I worked for him in North Dakota. I managed a lot of entrepreneurial money there. I think it's a great state. But if it's not energy, interior is good because I want to open up the ANWR. I want to use that to reduce debt. That's part of the mandate there. And he wants to use energy to solve problems in America, to reduce inflation and also bring more cash against deficit. I like it. It's sort of, to me, better than nothing. He's got a full mandate and he's got some power here. He is a fantastic entrepreneur. Remember what he did. He was part of the Microsoft team. He's a tech guy, loves energy, but he also understands the environmental issues. This guy is pure gold for the administration. I think Trump knows that.
We love to get your thoughts on sort of the investing landscape as well. You've talked a lot about how President-elect Trump has sort of saved entrepreneurship, right? Bringing back investors and people who believe in innovating in this country. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is remove the roadblocks is the key. Now, what happened here was the big decision. Are we going to go in the different direction? We decided to go towards more of the typical strategy of lower taxes, more innovation, less regulation. The market is really liking that. But for small entrepreneurs, what you need to do is remove regulation because they can't afford lawyers. They can't afford publicists. They can't afford lobbyists. And I think that's what Trump's going to do on a federal level. And with this interior thing with Burgum we just mentioned, maybe he'll open up some land for housing. That would be good, too. There's a lot of opportunity here, and the market senses it. Plus, he's pro-crypto, pro-digital. I'm loving it. I'm a policy guy. I love the policies ahead, and I'm investing according to it. I think the whole world is doing the same thing. Now, there's a lot on his head right now. Trump's going to really have to deliver here, but I think that's why he's shaking it up with some of these more controversial proposals.
Real quick on crypto, Kevin. Obviously, we saw a huge run up. Now we're seeing some, a little bit of a bounce down. It seems normal to me staying in that range. I think people are still pretty bullish on it. But how are you? How do you look at it?
I am bullish, and the reason I'm bullish is the more it gets brought into the traditional regulatory environment, and the rumor on the street, and I've mentioned this before, is the CFTC, a commodities regulator, is going to get more power on crypto. So we know the direction now that the SEC is going to change. Maybe Gensler's not around in the future, and it's more CFTC. That means if I'm an institutional investor and I want to buy a 3% weighting in Bitcoin in my portfolio, I have to do that. And I'm agnostic to the price. I'm going to hold it for 10, 12 years. And there's going to be a lot of demand, and that's why this particular...
See, the thing is, haters are always going to hate people. That's just the facts. Elon Musk has proven himself time and time again, every single time. Okay? Every single time. And it's proven to be an asset to the United States, as well as mankind, human beings, okay, around the world. He's proven to be a useful asset to people. So let this man do what he has to do to move the United States forward. And if you notice, guys, Elon Musk has been so close to the president-elect, the 47th Donald J. Trump, for a long time. Well, prior to the election and now after the election and after the win, he's been with the president. And he's been on calls with the president when it comes to foreign issues. Let's see what he has to say with the Iranian issue.
The New York Times reports that on Monday, Elon Musk met with Iran's ambassador to the United Nations. They reportedly discussed ways to diffuse tensions between Iran and America. Retired four-star General Jack Keane joins me now. General, Musk talks with the Iranians. Musk gets on the phone with Ukraine's Zelensky. Do Do you approve of Musk getting involved in foreign relations like this?
Well, obviously, he's not an official of the United States government, but he is an advisor to the president-elect. I think what's actually happening here, Stuart, is, first of all, the president-elect is not going to reach out as the president-elect while there's a serving president himself to make connections, given the fact that he doesn't take office until sometime in January. So I think he's using a close advisor of his, someone who he trusts, to do a little bit of that, to set the stage for him. And I'm not overreacting to the fact that Musk may be talking to him about negotiations in the future. I am very confident about the direction that President Trump, when he takes office, is going to go in. He knows Iran has operationalized all the proxies, and their intent is to drive the United States out of the region and destroy the state of Israel. He's got a very close relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu. He'll give him everything he needs and encourage him to finish it as soon as possible. But at the same time, Trump wants to establish peace and stability in the region. That is his objective. And I'm confident that the Iranians would not have done what they did in the region if he was still the president of the United States. So understanding that, I think Musk may be carrying two messages to the foreign minister of Iran. One is that you're going to have to knock off what you're doing. You've attacked U.S. troops in the region over 300 times. You're firing, and this is through proxies, you're firing ballistic missiles at Navy warships, and you're trying to destroy the state of Israel. That has got to stop if we're going to have any relationship whatsoever. Secondly, President Trump will be willing to work with you if you stop this malign and aggressive activity, and we can sit down and talk about peace and stability in the region. And one of those agenda items is you don't build a nuclear weapon, because that will destabilize the region, force us to take action, force Israel to take action against you. So I think this can be a positive thing in setting the stage for something that's going to come later.
Does the Pentagon need radical reform? Because that's what Pete Hegseth is going to be a Sec Defense for.
Well, the Pentagon doesn't need a bunch of generals being fired and diversion, equity, inclusion. That's going to change on day one. I think the president will likely, as President Biden did when he took over, he put this policy in place and asked all federal agencies to comply. On day one, I'm assuming the policy goes away and the Pentagon will be absolutely the first to complete the execution of that order. I guarantee it, all right? But the Department of Defense has nothing to do but to execute that order when President Biden administered it. And we're exaggerating, in my judgment, the degree of a problem. Here's the reform we need in the Pentagon. And these are serious, serious issues. One is we need to rebuild our defense. Defense budget, as you know, flat for 4 years under the Biden administration. President Xi is building his military capability the most rapid we've ever seen in history. They outpace us with every weapon system, every platform, air, at sea, except submarines. And that distance, in terms of outpacing us, has grown to the point where we would be challenged in fighting them to win. That's the reality of it. That's number one. We got to fix this. Secondly, the business practices in the Pentagon, Stuart, something you're familiar with. They are ossified. I'm serious. There's risk aversion that are built into them. It's too slow to get a platform, and it's absolutely too costly as a result of it. Several secretaries have tried to fix it and have failed. We need that reform, and it has to be aggressive. And you can't do any of this without the Congress of the United States. And the Congress of the United States has been an impediment as much as a supporter. Impediment how? Continuing resolutions. We've had a generation of continuing resolutions which handicaps the defense spending effectively. Congressmen and senators will not get rid of legacy systems that are in their districts or in their states because the Pentagon wants to remove them and get new. And that's the reality of some of the issues that the Congress has to face. So, yes, incoming Secretary of Defense Hegseth, major reform inside the Pentagon for sure. We've got to restore deterrence. We need the help of the Congress to do that. This is the most significant.
This is the time for unity right here. This right here is the time for unity, especially for the 47th president-elect. Because if the House and the Senate don't come together to help Trump accomplish his goal by confirming all of these picks and making sure the mandate he was given by the 75 million plus people that voted for him in America, midterms is going to come in 2 years. What is going to happen? They better do what they got to do. They better do what they got to do. Okay, so according to the word out there is Trump's cabinet will be once in a lifetime. Do you believe? I mean, just Tulsi, RFK, that's once in a lifetime, bro.
Thank you, Vivek. Good. He working with Elon on efficiency. They're working on efficiency, among other things, and they're going to be saving a lot of money and making our country stronger and better. And they'll be coming out with individual reports, but a big one toward the end. And you put those two together, it's going to be really great.
That's President-elect Trump speaking at Mar-a-Lago last night, praising Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's plans to cut government spending and waste. Musk and Ramaswamy will be heading the Department of Government Efficiency, which is now using X to hire employees. The agency says it is looking for, quote, super high IQ small government revolutionaries willing to work 80-plus hours a week on unglamorous cost cutting. And there will be zero compensation. Joining me now is 8 VC managing partner and Palantir co-founder Joe Lonsdale. Joe, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. How do you like that post from Elon? That's not such a great sales pitch. Work 80 hours, no pay.
It sounds like he wants the type of people that have built the greatest companies in Silicon Valley to come jump in. And you know, Maria, I'm just friends with these guys helping out on the side, and I've gotten hundreds of notes from people. How can I help? How can I? I mean, this is an exciting time in our history. We love it. We love it. I love that. This is, America should be growing. Our economy should be growing at twice the rate it is. And like so many of us for years, for decades, have seen this sclerotic bureaucracy, this fourth branch of government that's permanently in charge of our country, and wish someone could do something about it. So this is a huge opportunity.
It sure is. And thank you as a business person and an investor for pitching in here. It's great to see Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and yourself and others really pitching here, very patriotic to try to help get things better in government. Now, you were with Musk and Ramaswamy in Palm Beach this week. How did that go? Tell us about it. What have you learned about their roles and what they're about to take on?
Oh, well, I was just visiting friends. I can't speak for them. But what I'll tell you is this is a very serious effort, right? The only way this is going to work is that they're part of the transition and helping out and making sure we're putting people in who are going to be bold. Listen, Maria, when you go to D.C., one of the rules in D.C. is this fourth branch of government. It is cocky, right? It is so convinced. I even talk to friends and friends of friends now, like, oh, they can't do anything. They're not going to be able to stop us. We're too powerful. Like, there's two rules for what that government actually does. One is they give hundreds of billions of dollars to their friends. And two is they protect themselves. They have not only most of the Democratic Party, but also a lot of Republicans that for decades have protected the special interests of these bureaucrats. And these bureaucrats, they're convinced nothing can be done to them. And I think there's going to be so much happening at once. There's going to be so many regulations they're going after to get rid of. And there's going to be so much waste and so many people, so many things that shouldn't be there. And they're not doing it to attack these people. I think they actually want to be the energies. We want to be very generous to the people, but we need to get rid of this waste. And there's a lot of smart people coming to do that. And I'm very excited about it.
Well, I mean, look, this is the first time in a long time we've actually seen the administration, a leader, the president, incoming president, have a growth strategy. Okay, for the last 4 years, growth was not a priority, right? And now it's a priority. So that is very optimistic because it tells you that, yeah, if growth is a priority, we're going to see real growth. Trump has been filling more key cabinet positions. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the only way you can actually do this, remember, is with extreme boldness, right? I think people don't understand, like, this has to be, it's a form of a war. Like, the people, that all these departments in D.C., they're set up to defend themselves, and they assume that people are going to come in, they're kind of going to get along. Maybe people will try to move around a few percent on the margin, but they assume no one's going to ever really be able to change them or take them over. And so I think what's going to surprise people is, and if you see this with the picks from this transition, with the picks from President Trump, like, they are ready to be bold, right? You look at the new SecDef, and you have someone who's young, who's smart, who's a warrior, and who's not going to be pushed around, and who's been willing to speak up and say what's broken, say what we have to get rid of, and rethink things from scratch. And you see a lot of these different picks. I think you're really picking people who are bold and who are ready to go to war for our country and actually change things. And in some ways, you say, Maria, it really is like a sort of new founding in some ways for what we're doing here, for how the government's going to work if they get it right.
Yeah, and I think that's partly why Trump's detractors are afraid of him. Okay, because he's going to come up and break some stuff and, start again. And they want the status quo. They're afraid of losing their grip on power. Trump has been filling more key cabinet positions. He's tapped Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services Secretary, Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. Some of these are real non-traditional names, and that's the point. Tell us your thoughts on his cabinet pick so far.
Well, Maria, there's a lot of really bold people. There's a lot of people that are not willing to be controversial. Even last time in the Trump administration, a lot of the people, if you looked, they really didn't want to be attacked too much in the press. They didn't want to be seen as too aggressive. They didn't want to kind of make their lives stressful by going against things. And I think this time it's very clear. The message is we're going to pick people who are the boldest people, who are not afraid to be attacked. In fact, who are going to be attacked, but they're going to work with the administration and they're going to root things out. And they're going to change how things work in D.C. and they're not going to accept the status quo. And this is something you've never seen before in our lifetime.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that this time around, this whole resist BS is not going to work. OK, the resist, it's just not going to work. People want change. We know that. So I want to get your take on where the growth is today. Joe, you have been an astute investor, certainly when it comes to defense, when it comes to real growth stories in America. Defense stocks were down as investors are worried about some changes coming to the Defense Department. But look, we need to bulk up our defense because we've got our adversaries on the march. How do you see that in terms of growth and investing around what we're about to see?
Maria, I'm glad defense stocks are down. The public defense stocks should be down because the legacy defense companies are really close friends with the sclerotic bureaucracy and have been getting away with tons of nonsense and ripping off our country. And it's unacceptable. And they have a lot of people in Congress on their pay. They have a lot of people in the department going in and out on their pay. They have a lot of mediocre generals. You know what happened in the last time we did something like this is right around 1940. They took out hundreds of generals and they realized they were crony. They realized a lot of them were old, unfit. And by firing a lot of those people, it made way for people like Eisenhower, for people like Patton. I have his sword upstairs here. I keep the design for World War I. We had made a lot of the great men in our country came up and actually fixed things. And so what we want to see is defense stocks down because what that shows is that things are going to get shaken up according to what the market's worried about. Because we actually need to make room for the new innovation and not just to keep funding people to do things cost plus that cost 10 times as much as they should. That's yesterday's technology. So this is very exciting to me.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. So, Joe, where specifically do you think we're going to be investing, and where is the growth within defense? Is it drones? Is it, crime-related products? What specifically are you looking at?
What we're looking at is all sorts of new. What's really going to be the biggest difference is you're going to have 5 or 10 new primes in this country. You're going to have the same type of people Elon Musk and Vivek are asking to come work 80 hours a week and work on Doge with high IQs. It's those sort of people with that background who are building the top new companies, whether it's Anduril, whether it's Saronic, whether it's Epirus, whether it's a handful of others. And so you have a bunch of competitors that are a whole new type of the very, very best and brightest from our innovation world that are coming and that are growing quickly. And what are the technologies? Yeah, it's swarms of autonomous drones, swarms of autonomous vehicles on the land and on the water. It's new types of much cheaper missiles. It's new types of electromagnetic defense. It's new types of electronic warfare. But what it really is, Maria, is it's the best and brightest from the young generation, partnering with the top technologies in the U.S., combining them with advances from Silicon Valley, and applying them in ways that terrify our enemies. And you see a handful of these companies, and they're mostly private right now, and they're going to break through, and they're going to end up being the key way that we deter the bad guys.
I love it. Joe, real quick on crypto. I was with one of the lawmakers last night on Digital Assets Committee, and he told me when Trump comes into office, we're going to see the crypto industry, blockchain-related companies revolutionize our economy. Do you believe that? How do you think things change?
I think that the SEC has been harassing crypto, just like almost every other regulatory agency has been harassing every one of us and everything it does. And I think that, listen, you still want to stop any kind of crazy schemes, because there are crazy schemes that go on in crypto, and those will be stopped. But I think crypto will be a way that a lot of things can coordinate in AI, that a lot of things can coordinate in many parts.
Everything is already going wild, okay? Trump has revolutionized the whole game. I told you the crypto is going to go all the way to the moon. The stock market has been doing great. You know, people are trying to lay down their arms and saying, yo, we're not fighting. It's a lot of good news coming soon, guys. You better wait on the OG. He's going to make America great again like he promised. That's all I can say.
Seems liberals have not learned their lesson yet. Massachusetts Democrat Seth Moulton is facing backlash for saying how members of his own party spend too much time trying, quote, not to offend on topics like trans athletes, saying, quote, I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. Well, maybe he should have been afraid, because the woke mob was not happy. A top Democrat in Moulton's hometown of Salem wants him replaced, allegedly, listen to this, even calling him a Nazi cooperator. And there's a pro-trans rally against Moulton being held in his hometown this weekend. But the congressman says the backlash proves his point.
It completely proves my point. I mean, I was using this as one of many examples where the Democratic Party has lost touch with the American people. But the problem is that we're so insistent on, policing our words and even refusing to engage in debates about contentious issues that we're just losing on them.
And will they come after AOC next? She apparently just took her pronouns off her X account. So, Greg, we are all left to wonder AOC's gender. What are we to do?
It's hard. I'd say, thank God I know what a woman is, and she's all woman. It's fitting that his hometown is Salem, because this is the new witch trials. Even after America has told them, no, you aren't the majority and your ideas are crazy, especially on autogynephilia, they can't let go. And here's why. Because we just didn't turn the page. We threw out their entire book. And it was the only book they've been reading. It's like we burned the Bible, the first testament of identity politics, and they have no other language. They don't know how to speak. And the reason is identity politics was never about thinking. It was about not thinking. You begin and end on who you are, and the issues that follow are irrelevant. So the fact that I am trans takes priority over the concern of girls changing in front of creepy men in locker rooms. What comes first is I am trans. The activist zeal keeps people from speaking out. That's the way it's intended. That's why the trans issue was the most important one, because it wasn't about the numbers. It was about the impact on others and compelling others to bend to what many believe is a fetish cult.
Yeah, and a lot of people said we want normalcy. We don't want biological men and women's sports. Jesse, there's a fascinating piece in the Times, and it is about undecided voters. And the moment they said, I've got to go for Trump, and there's this 25-year-old named McLean, and she said, I shocked myself and voted for Trump. No one tell my family. I think I became radicalized on the men and women's sports issue. The ad that said Kamala represents they, them, Trump represents you, that was so compelling. She goes on to say she doesn't really like Trump, but he was team normal.
Yeah, now all the Democrats are whining to Schumer that they never got any help when they got crushed with these they-them ads. Now, Greg just made such a good point, but he speaks so quickly, no one heard it. He said that identity politics made people not think. And that's such a great point. And I don't want to say anything else nice about you because you have a huge ego. But
that's true.
This does kind of reflect what the party's going through right now. How to be a working class party, but also how to be a woke party. Problem is woke and working class doesn't mix. It's like oil and water or oil and vinegar, whatever it is. It doesn't mix. You can't have oil and vinegar. You can't have them both at the same time. Now, if you're highly evolved like I am,
yes,
I can treat people with respect and dignity if they have different lifestyles or different identities. But what I don't do is I don't allow those lifestyles and identities to impose their agenda on the rest of society. That's where they get caught up. Now, what I don't understand is they don't understand math, because it's like 0.1% of the population cares, but it's taken over their whole party. It's because this 0.1% is so damn loud, and they're so damn feisty, and they're the ones in the streets, and they're the ones in Hollywood, and a lot of them are in the media. So they're punching way above their weight, and they don't have anybody in the party to tell them to knock it off. That's why they need Rahm Emanuel. Right now, they're begging Rahm Emanuel to come in and run the DNC. They're begging a straight white man to come in and say, crazy people, knock it off. This is what we need to do to win.
He was a ballet dancer.
He was?
Yes.
Oh, who knew that, man? Greg.
And he's a heterosexual.
Who isn't?
Oh my gosh. Judge, so the New York Times, and to another point of oil and water, is science and politics.
Oil and water, got it?
Oil and water.
Pretty sure it's vinegar.
This was Pamela Paul. She was a Dem, and she changed, and well, she's still a Dem, but she says this about her party. More than 14,000 American children had gender-related medical interventions between 2019 and 23. While much of Europe has been pulling back from the gender affirmation model, evidence emerged that in the U.S., proponents of this approach have let politics color science. So what about hail the science, Dr. Fauci? We don't listen to science on the left.
Well, the interesting thing about all of this is that it is so exaggerated in this country, and Europe is ahead of us, obviously, on this, because they now recognize the damage that was done. I have a couple of thoughts, Greg. The first one is to you. AOC dropping her pronouns. I think there's a reason for that, and we'll know in a couple of months what that reason is.
You leave me pregnant with thought.
Yes, very good. Okay, and my second point is kudos to this congressman, because his familial status is more important than political ideology. Third thing, you got to understand as a parent, when you have a child, and most of us here have, and hopefully all will, but when you have a child, you love them immediately. You watch them grow. You go to their first game in sports, and then you get up early and take them to practice. And at night, they're late with practice, and you pick them up. And then they go to college, and some of them play sports in college. And then all of a sudden, this little girl, like my Kiki, all right, now all of a sudden, if she wants to play soccer, she's got some guy named Jeffrey who wants to call himself Janice, who's going to spike a volleyball at her head. And to make matters worse, afterwards, he's going to see her in the shower. Yeah. This is absolute lunacy. And so now the trans are staging some kind of rally at Moulton's home. And I would think that those protesters haven't played sports, and that every one of those the protesters at the congressman's house, they should pick up a football, a basketball, a volleyball, whatever it is, and do hoops or whatever game they can, and then see if they are well enough as a woman to compete with a man, and then see how long they make it.
Just don't make it skins and shirts.
Right. Harold, Republicans spent $77 million on ads on the trans issue alone. And it's not Moulton who's the only one upset. Democrats apparently were clamoring with Schumer. We got to do something here because this issue killed us.
We talked about it a lot on this show. I think, and I've tried to say this, just because you're asking people to listen and that people are concerned about an issue doesn't make you racist or fascist or Hitler. Seth Moulton is a tough, decorated Marine. The people who are talking about him, I want to know how many of you served. How many of you picked up a gun and shot it on behalf of the country and tried to protect the country? That doesn't make him above you, but that makes him where you should listen to him. He didn't say, I have two daughters and you guys are wrong. He said, I have two daughters and I want to at least have a conversation about this. Two, this campaign, I agree with a lot that's been said about what Trump and how all these things have happened in his campaign, but every presidential campaign, something dramatic happens. Obama, something dramatic happened. Clinton, something dramatic happened. W. Bush, H.W. Bush. What I really think this election did, what Donald Trump did was he eulogized both the Republican Party of old and the Democratic Party of old. The Republican Party now is the voice and the face through Donald Trump of working class Americans. And many of the issues that we've talked about here, and particularly this one, is one that resonates and one that animated and catalyzed people to go out and vote. When independents, to your point, Judge, the majority, or the biggest issue for many independents that voted in the battleground states was this issue. And I don't think that they do not like trans kids, or they don't like gay kids, or they don't like lesbians or men whom are gay. What they don't like is what we talked about here. It was a brilliant move on the part of the Trump campaign to make this issue about sports and bathrooms. And as a father of a 10-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son, it's something that resonates with me. Oil and water. This stuff doesn't, what Democrats have to understand is you can't talk about cultural priorities unless they're actually the priorities of the country. And this issue here was not a priority of the American people overall. And if Democrats don't figure this out, we're going to have.
Adults, you can be whoever you want to be. Children, you know, children are not old enough to vote or buy alcohol or stuff like that. So, in my opinion, let kids be kids and let adults be adults. This is my opinion, okay? It is what it is. All right. Vivek. Let's listen to Vivek Ramaswamy speech yesterday.
It's good to be here. The last time I was in this room was a little over a week ago when they called North Carolina, and things went a little wild here, but I will tell you, not only did we win North Carolina, now America is back, and we are ready for business. And I will tell you, it is a special time to be in this country. I want to recognize Brooke Rollins and Linda and the America First Policy Institute. Thank you all for supporting the work of the next 250 years in this country. We're just getting started. And the thing I remember about last week is when Donald Trump was in this room, everybody else was celebrating. He was stone cold ready for the next step, because last Tuesday was not the destination, it was the start line for the revival of this country. The cabinet picks this week, you know what? Donald Trump wasn't afraid in putting Tom Homan and Kristi Noem in charge of the mass deportations of millions of illegals for this country. But I also want to thank him for making sure that Elon Musk and I are in a position to start the mass deportations of millions of unelected federal bureaucrats out of the D.C. bureaucracy. That, too, is how we're going to save this country. And I don't know if you've got to know Elon yet, but he doesn't bring a chisel, he brings a chainsaw, and we're going to be taking it to that bureaucracy. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I do want to say this, is that we've been taught to believe over the last 4 years that we have become a nation in decline, that we're at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. All we have is to fight over the scraps of some shrinking pie. I don't think we have to stay that nation in decline. I think with what happened last week, we're back to being a nation in our ascent, a nation whose best days are actually still ahead of us. I couldn't tell you last year that it was morning in America. It's not. It's not yet, but on January 20th, it is going to be morning in America, the start of a new dawn, the start of a country where our kids are going to grow up and we're going to tell them and mean it that you get ahead in the United States again with your own hard work and commitment and dedication, that you're free to speak your mind at every step of the way, that the best person gets the job regardless of their skin color. I think most of us agree on it. The next 4 years, it's just the beginning. It's not the end of the chapter, it's the beginning. And I think the work that's going on here at AFBI sets the course not just for the next 4 years, but for the next 250. And so what I will say is when we send Donald J. Trump back to the White House on January 20th, that is just the beginning of our best days as a nation, still yet ahead of us. Thank you all for supporting the mission here. Thank you all for your love of this country. Do not stop fighting until we get this job done. And 4 years from now, we're going to say not make America great again, but keep making America greater. Thank you all. God bless you and your families. Let's enjoy the celebration, and may our best days be ahead. Thank you. Congratulations, Brooke. Thank you.
Shout out to Vivek. Shout out to Vivek, man. This man's future is so bright in the Republican Party, 100%. You know, he has been appointed with Elon Musk to be Doge. Doge, guys. Shout out to Vivek and Elon Musk. Doge. Department of Government Efficiency. And they've already started working. That's how wild these two are. And these guys are billionaires. Okay. Okay, so let's throw it back a little bit to RFK and see down the lane of what he's been all about and what he truly stands for.
Mr. Kennedy, I want to ask you specifically about the Hunter Biden laptop story. The total blackout on all social media outlets as well as telecom. You couldn't text the link to the Hunter Biden laptop story. This specifically was a form of election interference by the U.S. government in the 2020 election.
I don't know enough about it. I know that there was censorship on that story and other stories that, presumably could have changed people's minds about the election.
And we know the polling demonstrates that now. People have said they would have changed their vote had they been made aware of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Isn't that correct?
I'm not aware of that, but I'm not surprised.
Mr. Sauer, I want to turn to you. I want your reflection on this form of government censorship, specifically in the 2020 election, as a form of election interference, and what I believe is some of the, most egregious political scandals that, I will live through in my lifetime. Mr. Sauer, what are your reflections?
I strongly agree with your characterization of that form of censorship as election interference. The evidence in our case strongly supports that. It strongly supports, and actually we have judicial findings now, that the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story was done at the instigation of federal officials in the FBI at a very high level of that organization. It was an orchestrated campaign of deception that was anticipatory. It was planned in advance, and it was, I think, consummated with the testimony that I hadn't seen before that's been put up today from Ms. Demlow, characterizing how, at the very end, the FBI then clammed up at the last minute after spending months of seeding the record in these endless, ceaseless meetings with social media platforms about there's a hack and dump coming, it's going to involve Hunter Biden. Then when it actually came, they said, well, no comment. Our judge focused on that particular issue as kind of the coup de grace in this form of election interference.
Thank you. My time's expired.
Gentleman yields back. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. We appreciate the work you're doing to defend the First Amendment, and thank you for just very compelling answers and compelling testimony and the work you've done and how important this is for the country. I mean, if we don't have a First Amendment, it's just, I'm frightened by where we go.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
You may not. You may not.
I just want to respond.
Mr. Chair,
the
time is out. We're done.
I haven't adjourned the hearing, and I don't think you're the chair.
Mr. Chair,
Chairman's discretion.
I know it's your discretion.
We're going to let Mr. Kennedy.
He has had so much additional time.
Well, I think everyone's had additional time.
Why? Why are you doing that specifically for him?
Because
we
don't
want to explain to other people.
I'm sure the
super PAC.
I'm sure the Democrat witness will be as short as he possibly can.
No. Are you going to allow our witness to just give another piece?
No, let him address the defamatory comment that was made about him that's untrue.
That was not defamatory. That is a legal definition that was not met.
I want to acknowledge information about the super PAC that you mentioned.
Go ahead.
I've just been told that super PAC is connected to somebody that we have a connection to. It's not a super PAC that I've endorsed, and it's not one, as I said, that I've ever heard of.
Thank the gentleman for that statement, and I thank you for your testimony. The committee is now adjourned.
And, so I know that I can fix it, and I can fix it fast. But I can't do it alone. I need an army. I need your help, and particularly, I need your help now getting on the ballot in each state. The Democratic and Republican parties are going to try to prevent me from getting on the ballot. We have 250,000 volunteers now. We are getting bigger crowds than any of the other presidential candidate, with the exception of Donald Trump. And we are already way ahead of our metrics for getting on the ballot in the states where we are legally permitted to go after them. States like Maryland, we're double where we're supposed to be at this time. So I know we can do it, but we need a lot of help, and we need you to do it. And so I'm asking you to sign up tonight. Make sure that you sign a petition for ballot access, and if you're willing to help us on this, on getting ballots in Georgia and South Carolina, please sign up tonight. And I want to ask you to do something else. I have one of the reasons that I do so well with young people is that of people under 45 is that people under 45 are not getting their news from the mainstream media. I honestly don't know if my children have ever seen an evening news broadcast. And they're very well informed, but they get their money, they get their information from what we used to call unconventional sources. They get it from listening to podcasts, and they get it from social media and a lot of alternative media. So, and that's why I'm doing so well in those groups. And independents who are critical thinkers do the same thing because they're looking at unconventional sources of information. But if the only source of information that you have is MSNBC, CNN, and the New York Times, well, if I was living in that information bubble, I would have a very low opinion of myself. Because you're not going to hear anything good about me in any of that. You're going to hear a lot of defamations, a lot of mischaracterizations, and a lot of things that just aren't true. And what we find is that when we can convince those people to watch a podcast, to watch Joe Rogan's, Jordan Peterson, to watch me on it, to watch Tucker Carlson, to watch Aubrey Marcus, or one of those long-form interviews, that they have a very, very high and very quick conversion rate. And people say, oh, he doesn't have horns and a tail. He actually sounds like he's common sense. So what we need to do over the next 12 months is get a critical mass of those baby boomers to watch those podcasts and to look at other forms of information, which there's this kind of tribal religious orthodoxy that says if you even suggest an alternative, that you're a dangerous person. We have to break through to those people. And so what I'm asking you to do is to go to wear some of our merch. There's these guys out here who are selling great merch. We don't make any money from them. I wish we had that idea, but it's really good merch that they have. Or get it from our campaign. Go on the Kennedy 24 website, wear a button, wear a cap, wear a shirt, a t-shirt, or a sweatshirt, put a bumper sticker on your card, pick up tonight a lawn sign, and give my campaign visibility. And then what's going to happen is, most people who are wearing the merch will tell you is that you get a lot of thumbs up and a lot of high signs. And occasionally, maybe once a day, somebody comes up and says, why are you for him? Isn't he crazy? And you can say to them, just look at 10 minutes of this video. And the conversion rate is enormous. We need people to go out from each one of these rallies. And, if you believe in this campaign, if you want to be part of the Army, the uniform is wear something or display something and engage people and try to convince them to look at other sources. And we only need to get a few of those baby boomers, 15 or 20%, and we win. So I'm asking all you energetic young people, stand up for your generation. I want to give you back the American dream. If you elect me president, I'm going to make you my priority. You're going to get back your country. $1 billion to Kamala Harris. I want to point out somebody who's in the audience tonight. She's a woman named Sherry Peebles. And Sherry, are you here? Will you stand up if I can point you out? Okay, so Sherry Peoples is an African-American woman who has a daughter, Shayna, a straight-A student. She missed 60 days of school because she was in a hospital because she had sickle cell anemia. And her mom, Sherry, filled out all the forms, the federal and the state forms, explaining why she was missing her school. She did her schoolwork every day. She got straight A's, as I said. But Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of California. And Kamala Harris learned that the state was losing $1.3 billion a year because of truancy. And she said, I want that money. So I'm going to start putting parents in jail whose children skip too much school. Oh, she arrested Sherry Peoples in her home. The police came in and handcuffed her. And when she said, why am I being handcuffed? The police said to her, talk to Kamala Harris. They didn't want to be doing it either. She lost her job. She lost her home. And she still raised an extraordinary child. Don't you want a president of the United States who's going to end chronic disease rather than putting parents in jail? Don't you want an America president who's going to make our country healthy again?
Here's the good news. While mainstream outlets denied me a critical platform, they didn't shut down my ideas, which have especially flourished among young voters and independent voters, thanks to the alternative media. Many months ago, I promised the American people that I would withdraw from the race if I became a spoiler. A spoiler is someone who will alter the outcome of the election but has no chance of winning. In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to electoral victory in the face of this relentless systematic censorship and media control. So I cannot in good conscience ask my staff and volunteers to keep working their long hours or ask my donors to keep giving when I cannot honestly tell them that I have a real path to the White House. Furthermore, our polling consistently showed that by staying on the ballot in the battleground states, I would likely hand the election over to the Democrats with whom I disagree on the most existential issues: censorship, war, and chronic disease. Oh, I want everyone to know that I am not terminating my campaign. I am simply suspending it and not ending it. My name will remain on the ballot in most states. If you live in a blue state, you can vote for me without harming or helping President Trump or Vice President Harris. In red states, the same will apply. I encourage you to vote for me. And if enough of you do vote for me, and neither of the major party candidates win 270 votes, which is quite possible, in fact, today our polling shows them tying at 269 to 269, and I could conceivably still end up in the White House in a contingent election. But in about 10 battleground states where my presence would be a spoiler, I'm going to remove my name, and I've already started that process and urge voters not to vote for me. It's with a sense of victory and not defeat that I'm suspending my campaign activities. Not only did we do the impossible by collecting 1 million signatures, we changed the national political conversation forever. Chronic disease, free speech, government corruption, breaking our addiction to war,
have moved to the center of politics. I can say to all who have worked so hard in the last year and a half, thank you for a job well done. Three great causes drove me to enter this race in the first place, primarily. And these are the principal causes that persuaded me to leave the Democratic Party and run as an independent, and now to throw my support to President Trump. I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting. 16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent. The mainstream of American politics and journalism derided my decision. Conventional wisdom said that it would be impossible even to get on the ballot as an independent because each state poses an insurmountable tangle of arbitrary rules for collecting signatures. I would need over 1 million signatures, something no presidential candidate in history had ever achieved. And then I'd need a team of attorneys and millions of dollars to handle all the legal challenges from the DNC. The naysayers told us that we were climbing a glass version of Mount Impossible. So the first thing I want to tell you is that we proved them wrong. We did it because beneath the radar of mainstream media organs, we inspired a massive independent political movement. More than 100,000 volunteers sprang into action, hopeful that they could reverse our nation's decline. Many worked 10-hour days, sometimes in blizzards and blazing heat. They sacrificed family time, personal commitments, and sleep month after month, energized by a shared vision of a nation healed of its divisions. They set up tables at churches and farmers' markets. They canvassed door to door. In Utah and in New Hampshire, volunteers collected signatures in snowstorms, convincing each supporter to stop in the frigid cold, to take off their gloves, and to sign legibly. During a heat wave in Nevada, I met a tall, athletic volunteer who cheerfully told me that he had lost 25 pounds collecting signatures in 117-degree heat. To finance this effort, young Americans donated their lunch money, and senior citizens gave up part of their Social Security checks. Our 50-state organization collected those millions of signatures and more. No presidential campaign in American political history has ever done that. And so I want to thank all of those dedicated volunteers and congratulate the campaign staff who coordinated this enormous logistical feat. Your accomplishments were regarded as impossible. You carried me up that glass mountain. You pulled off a miracle. You achieved what all the pundits said could never be done. You have my deepest gratitude, and I'm never going to forget that, not just for what you did for my campaign, but for the sacrifices you made because you love our country. You showed everyone that democracy is still possible here. It continues to survive in the press and in the idealistic human energies that still thrive beneath the canvas of neglect and of official and institutional corruption. Country healthy again. I saw another posting while I was driving down here today that shocked me too, actually. One was of President Obama saying that he didn't understand. That he didn't understand where all the division was coming from and the polarization in this country. And then there was another posting by Kamala Harris standing outside the Naval Observatory, which is the official residence of the Vice President of the United States, standing behind the presidential seal for our country, and comparing Donald Trump to Hitler. And saying that he was a fascist. And she based this extraordinary, irresponsible accusation on a story by John F. King, who was the director of Department of Homeland Security under Donald Trump and is a former Marine general and is deep into the deep state and to the intelligence apparatus in this country. Or John F. Kelly, I'm sorry. And Kelly told another story that Donald Trump had, during his presidency, Donald Trump learned that there was a Mexican-American soldier who had been murdered at Fort Hood, and that the Pentagon was refusing to pay her medical expenses, her funeral expenses. And Donald Trump said, if they won't do it, then I'm going to do it myself. And he paid her expenses out of his own pocket. And in order to discredit this extraordinary gesture of love and generosity by the American president, a soldier who he had never met before, John Kelly invented a story that he had made an insensitive remark about Mexicans. Unfortunately for Kelly, there were 3 people in the room at that time who all said that Kelly was lying, that it was an outright fabrication. So we need to wonder when Kelly invents this story that says that, where he said that President Trump wanted generals around him who were like Hitler's generals, which of course he didn't say. We already know that Kelly is a liar. And that Kelly invented other stories that were derogatory about the president. And these are the kind of stories you're seeing from all the generals and the intelligence agents who do not want to see Donald Trump in office again. And we have now somebody who's running for the presidency of the United States, a vice president, who is repeating these irresponsible stories. And to me, that alone disqualifies her for the presidency. You all know that when we were most Americans, when we're growing up, of my age at least, we were asked about this moral quandary about whether we would, if we could go back in time and kill a young Hitler, should we do that? And half the people say yeah, half maybe say no. but it's something that we all think about. And you think about how many unstable people there are in this country. And when you compare an American president to Hitler, you're pressing a button in those people to make them act on those violent aspirations and impulses. And it's at worst, don't you want a president who's going to bring America together again? Who's going to end the polarization and the division in our country? You know, I left the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party left me. I'm here to join you in making a new Declaration of Independence for our entire nation. We declare independence from the corporations that have hijacked our government. And we declare independence from Wall Street, from big tech, from big pharma, from big ag, from the military contractors and their lobbyists. And we declare independence from the mercenary media that is here to fortify all of the corporate orthodoxies from their advertisers and to urge us to hate our neighbors and to fear our friends. And we declare independence from the cynical elites who betray our hope and who amplify our divisions. And finally, we declare independence from the two political parties. And the corrupt interests that dominate them and the entire rigged system of rancor, of rage, of corruption, of lies that has turned government officials into indentured servants for their corporate bosses. We declare independence from these corrupting powers because they are incompatible with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of the people who sat in that hallway, ratified for us in 1776, 1787. Now we can guard life. How can we guard life when the for-profit corporations have captured the public agencies that are supposed to protect us? How can we enjoy liberty when a surveillance state seeks to hide the truth and to quash dissent? And how can we pursue happiness when debt and low wages imprison so many of our nation's families? And so I've come here today to declare our independence from the tyranny of corruption, which robs us of affordable lives, our belief in the future, and our respect for each other. But to do that, I must first declare my own independence. Independence from the Democratic Party, and from all other political parties. Well, I spent a lot of money on getting on every state ballot in this country. We got 1 million Americans to sign their names to petitions. We built a network in every state in this country. The entire time, our polling and all the national polling was showing that the majority, about 57 to 60% of the people that wanted to support me, if I dropped out of the race, they said that they wanted to vote for Donald Trump. So I was hurting Donald Trump. I was hurting the Republican Party. But the Republican Party did nothing to stop me from getting on any ballot. Donald Trump was critical of me in a way that was congenial, that was respectful, and that was kind. But he did nothing. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party spent tens of millions of dollars to defame me, to publish perjuries against me, to publish fake news against me, to marginalize me, to make me look like a crazy person, and they spent tens of millions of more dollars to get me to make sure I could not get on those state ballots. All the pundits from the beginning said, he will never get on the state ballots, but we did it despite those tens of millions of dollars and attorneys to sue us in all the states to make sure we couldn't get on. The Democratic Party sued me to keep me off the state here in Michigan, off the ballot. And the day that I announced for Donald Trump, they pivoted and sued me to keep me on the ballot. And so far, they've won that lawsuit. So my name is going to appear on the Michigan ballot. But I don't want you to vote for me. I want you to vote for Donald J. Trump. Because that's the only way that I'm going to get to Washington, D.C. and do all the things to help end the war, to end the chronic disease epidemic, to end the censorship, to end the surveillance, and all the other things that I entered this race to do.
As we head into primary season, what do you make of the DNC calendar?
Well, I think, it's pretty clear that the DNC does not want a primary. I don't want to say that they want a coronation, but that's, I think that that's a fair way to put it, actually. They're doing, they're essentially, they're fixing the process so that it makes it almost impossible to have democracy function. They're effectively disenfranchising the Democratic voters from having any choice in who becomes president, or who becomes the Democratic nominee. So two of the things they've done to date is they've moved the Iowa primary. They've made rules that if anybody campaigns in Iowa or any candidate sets foot in the state of Iowa or sets foot in the state of New Hampshire, then none of the votes that are cast for that candidate will be tallied. In other words, any delegate that I win in New Hampshire or Iowa would go instead to the president. And now they're trying to change it so that if I campaign in New Hampshire, that none of the votes cast for me in Georgia will count. And that's significant because it's hard to win the nomination without Georgia.
What is the logic?
Well, they're rigging it so that it, effectively, we're looking at the tabulations now that look like if you add up all the superdelegates that they control and all of the automatic delegates that just go to the party and go to the president, I would have to win almost 80% of all of the states in order to beat President Biden, even if he only wins 20%.
And yet you continue on. So what is your strategy then in light of this for defeating President Biden?
These rules will not be finalized until September 14th, and we've written the DNC protesting. I mean, there's some really wild things that they're now considering, including forcing me to actually pay for the primaries. And their logic is that they don't need a primary because they already have a candidate. And therefore, I'm costing them all this money, and that money should be paid for by me and, maybe Marianne Williamson. So it's not, it's a process that is rigged. And we live at a time in American history when a lot of Americans think that democracy is broken, that the political system is rigged, and that there's not really any democracy. And unfortunately, the DNC is taking a lot of steps that confirm that outlook. Now, you've all heard the pundits who have been lamenting, how do we get young people to engage again in politics? I see so many young people who have now inflamed with my campaign. And the answer to that question is that that's the wrong question to ask. The problem I found is not the young people. The problem is what my generation, the old people, have done to politics. The millennials and Gen Z are repelled by the toxicity, the pettiness, and more than anything else, by the dishonesty. They want authenticity. Oh no. The problem is the politics. I'm committed to inaugurating a politics that is worthy of their engagement. I want to share with you a hopeful sign. I'm proud to say that my supporters include both pro-lifers and pro-choicers. They include climate activists and climate skeptics. They include vaccinated and unvaccinated. They include people who for years have been on both sides of the culture war. Why? Because more and more Americans are beginning to understand that for the good of our country, one cannot insist on getting one's way on every issue. They understand that people can disagree and still respect each other. You can be pro-choice and not think that pro-lifers are women-hating zealots. You can support the Second Amendment and not think that gun control advocates are totalitarians who hate freedom. This is what I mean from independence. It's more than being independent of two existing parties. It's also independence from tribal thinking. It's freedom from the reflex of having to take sides. Instead of asking people, which side are you on? I'm going to ask people, what do you care about? What do your children need? What is it like to be you? What do you love? Because our country is never going to heal if the formula, the only formula, is for one half of the population to vanquish the other half in a pitched battle. Thank you. Thank you. A lot of people ask me why I left the Democratic Party. And I say, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Of course, we're throwing it back to the legend, RFK Jr., who has been chosen for Secretary of HHS. Well, nominated by the 47th president-elect for HHS. So we're throwing it back and we're seeing what this man stands for and who he is, even though a lot of people already know who RFK Jr. is. He doesn't need any introduction, okay? So thank you for tuning in one more time. Double tap your screen to get the likes up and subscribe to the channel.
This is not the party anymore of Martin Luther King, of Robert Kennedy, of John Kennedy. That was the party of peace. It was the party of constitutional rights, of civil rights, of freedom of speech. It was the party that wanted to protect and nurture the middle class. It was the party that stood up to censorship, to surveillance, that stood up to the CIA, to the military complex, military-industrial complex. And it was the party that wanted to protect public health and women's sports. My uncle, Ted Kennedy, wrote Title IX, which protected women's sports in college. It was the party that believed in voting rights and fought for the right of every American to vote for the person of their choice. Today's Democratic Party is the party of war. It's the party of the CIA. You had Kamala Harris giving a speech at the Democratic Convention that was written by neocons. It was belligerent, pugnacious. It talked about the domination of the world by the United States through our weapons of war. It's the party today that wants to divide Americans. It's the party that is dismantling women's sports by letting men play women's sports. It's the party of Wall Street. It's the party of Bill Gates, who just gave $50 million to Kamala Harris. It's the party, and the Harris campaign is very proud that it received the endorsement of 50 former CIA agents and officers, and of John Bolton, and of Dick Cheney. These are the people that gave us the war in Iraq, the worst foreign policy catastrophe that's ever happened to this country. These are the people that gave us the Patriot Act, that launched the surveillance state. These are the people that are trying to undermine voting rights in this country by weaponizing the federal agencies against political candidates, including me and Donald Trump and all other political candidates that can't win an election. And instead of bringing in a candidate who wins the primaries, abolish the primaries, and then pick two candidates, anointed them without receiving votes. We don't even know how Kamala Harris received the nomination. And this is the party of Wall Street, of big banks, of big data, of big tech, of the military contractors, and the parties of big pharma, big ag, big food, and big chemicals. This is the party that's given us the sickest children in the history of the world. When my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease, and we spend 0 on chronic disease in this country. Today, 60% of Americans have chronic disease. This is existential for our country. We're spending $4.3 trillion a year, 5 times our military budget. 77% of American boys cannot qualify for military service because of chronic disease diagnoses. This is existential for our country. President Trump called me 3 hours after his shooting. And he said, would I come and sit down with them? And he said to me during that meeting, he said, there are some things that we can agree on and some we disagree on, but the landscapes on which we agree are so much larger. He said, I want to end the wars. I want to end this surveillance and censorship. I want to protect the Constitution. I want to protect freedom of speech. I want to end the surveillance. I want to end the weaponization of government against American politicians. And I want to end the chronic disease epidemic. Now, don't you think that we deserve a president in this country who's going to restore the moral authority of the United States of America? Don't you think that we deserve a president who's going to end the warfare state and rebuild the middle class? Don't you want a president who's going to put America first? And don't you want a president who's going to protect our children? And who's going to protect women's sports? And who's going to stop dividing this country along racial lines? And don't you want a president who's going to end the corruption at the federal agencies, at FDA, at NIH, at CDC, and at the CIA? And don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again? And don't you want a president who's going to make America great again? And we need to go to the polls on November 5th and vote for Donald Trump. God bless you and God bless America. And one of the things that we learned at home is that we not only had to be virtuous as a nation, we had to be virtuous as individuals. We had to, for example, tell the truth when we did something wrong. So one time I hit a baseball through my mom's window and broke it. And my dad said to me, before you answer this question, I want you to remember what George Washington did. He cut down the cherry tree. This is a story every American knew at that time. His father asked him who cut it down, and he said, I did. He always admitted when he was wrong. But now, the Democratic Party has given us a loophole around that mandate. All you have to know is 7 words, and you never have to admit to doing anything wrong again. And do you know what those 7 words are? I was born in the middle class. Oh. So repeat after me, I was born in the middle class. So the next time your boss asks you why you were late for work, what are you going to say? And the next time your wife asks you why you didn't take out the garbage, what are you going to say? And the next time your landlord asked you for the rent check, what are you going to say? That's all you have to know, and you don't have to answer any question. And we know why she didn't want to answer that question, because there's no good answer to it. By every indicia in which we measure the welfare of our economy, the Trump administration excelled, and the Biden-Harris administration has failed us. Inflation on average during the Trump administration was held under 7%. Now it's at 20%. Gross rents have almost doubled. Mortgages have more than doubled in just 3.5 years. Groceries have gone up. Gasoline has gone up. Electricity has gone up. Healthcare has gone up. Do you know the only thing that's gone down? Wages. So, though that is not a success story, and I don't blame her for not wanting to answer that question. It was a question that was almost impossible for her to answer truthfully and still walk out of that debate. So, the Democratic Party that I grew up with, the Democratic Party of John F. Kennedy, of Robert Kennedy, does not exist today. This was the party of peace. Today, it's the party of war. And we saw President Zelensky come over here. I was so proud of President Trump today, who did a press conference with Zelensky. And the Democrats had done their own press conference, and you know what he got them to do? He got them to sign artillery shells. These are artillery shells that are going to be dropped on women and children. And he got them to sign something else, an $8 billion additional check. Don't you think we could use that money over here in this country? This was a war that we were lied to from day one. We were told that it was an unprovoked invasion. We weren't told that Vladimir Putin and every other Russian leader told us for 30 years, if you go into Ukraine, we're going to have a military reaction. It is a red line for us. Ukraine has a 2,200-mile border with Russia. They've been invaded 3 times through Ukraine. Last time, Hitler killed 1 out of every 7 Russians. If we put Aegis missile systems in Ukraine, like we've done in Romania and Poland, which they also told us don't go in there, those missiles, Tomahawk missiles, which can be nuclear tipped, will be 3 miles from Moscow. We could decapitate the entire Russian leadership in 3 minutes. My uncle, when the Russians tried to put missiles in Cuba, was going to go to war. And if Putin tried to put missiles in Canada or Cuba or Mexico, we would go to war. So we had to expect that they would do exactly what they told us we were going to do. And if you go into Ukraine with NATO, we're going to go to war. And 2 days before the invasion, Kamala Harris went to Germany and said definitively, for the first time by any U.S. leader, we are moving NATO into Ukraine. And that is something that we all need to understand, that provocation. And I was so proud of President Trump because everybody says that he alienates people all over the world. He doesn't know how to be a diplomat. But he was the epitome of diplomacy, and I urge you to go look at the YouTube. He was kind and civil to President Zelensky, but he was also firm in his resolve. And he said, I've had a nice meeting, but I have not changed my mind. We need a peace, and we need to do it very quickly. And we need to protect U.S. interests, not an interest of a country in which we have no strategic interest and no treaty. And he was polite. he was kind, but he was firm in protecting our country. And that's what Donald Trump will always do. And it was especially impressive to me because I know what Donald Trump was thinking while he was having that meeting. He was thinking, I want to turn this guy over and hold him by his legs and shake all the money out of his pockets. And I hope it adds up to $208 billion because that's what we get. That's what the Democrats gave him. And we need to bring that money home and spend it here on our communities. Don't you think you deserve a president who is going to make peace with the world? Who is going to project economic power abroad? They say he's an isolationist. He isn't. He wants to make deals. He's a deal maker. He wants to make deals with China, but not the old kind of deals that benefited only China. He wants to make deals that are going to benefit everybody. He wants to make deals with Russia, the kind that will bring the world into a peaceful economic growth and a boom for all nations. This is what he says again and again. He's not a tyrant. He's not a monster. He just wants the best for the United States of America. And don't you... The Democratic Party that I grew up with was the party of constitutional rights, of civil rights, and particularly the right of freedom of speech, which my uncle and my father treasured. They thought this is the basis. A fundamental bedrock of American democracy is the free flow of information. And when government gets involved in censoring information, that is the beginning of totalitarianism. And we know this because we read Orwell and Aldous Huxley and Robert Heinlein and Alexander Solzhenitsyn and Arthur Koestler when we were growing up. And that was the lesson that was repeated in civics lessons again and again. The one thing that you never allow a government to do is to censor speech of any kind. And if you do that, is the first step down the slippery slope of totalitarianism. So the Democrats are trying to say that Donald Trump hates democracy, that he wants to be a dictator, but they're all advocating now, openly advocating the censorship of our speech. And what they say is, well, we don't want to censor all speech, just the lies. But they want to determine what's the truth and what's a lie. And who was the biggest perpetrator of lies during the COVID epidemic? It was the government itself. They were the ones promoting disinformation and misinformation. And I saw this week Hillary Clinton, Tim Walz, and Kamala Harris all using the same talking point. That the next administration is going to get rid of misinformation and disinformation because that is not protected by the First Amendment. Well, it is. The First Amendment protects lies the same as it protects speech. The truth. The First Amendment was not written to protect the kind of speech that we all want to hear. It was written for hard times, to protect the speech that nobody wants to hear. And that is the fundamental foundation stone of democracy, that everybody gets to say, to have their own truth. And as Louis Brandeis said, the remedy for bad speech is not censorship, never, because that turns to totalitarianism. The remedy for bad speech is more speech. And that's something that Donald J. Trump understands because he's been censored himself. And he understands it very acutely. He's seen the weaponization of the federal agencies to silence him, to destroy the electoral process, as they did to me. The Democratic Party has not had an election. They're saying that he's destroying democracy. But they felt the need to destroy democracy in order to save it. They would not let me participate in the primary. And Kamala Harris never got a single primary vote. We don't know who appointed her. And that's not democracy. President, don't you want a president who believes in democracy? Don't you want a president who wants to see the censorship ended in this country? Don't you want a president who's going to end the surveillance state and make our country the beacon of freedom around the world once again? And the party that I grew up in, thank you very much. I started my presidential campaign 19 months ago, and the Democrats fought. They canceled the primary so I couldn't run, and they canceled the debates, and then I switched to independence. And I was taking more votes away from Donald Trump than the Democrats. But Donald Trump never sued me, and he never said anything nasty about me. He was always very civil. And the Democrats sued me, and they sued me to keep me off the ballot. They spent $10 million. They filed suits in 10 states. And then when I endorsed President Trump in August, they sued me to keep me on the ballot. And they lost most of those suits. Yes, 2 days ago, they won 2 of them in Wisconsin and in Michigan. And why did they do that? They did that because they want to confuse the voters. They want to interfere with the election because they're keeping somebody on the ballot who's not running. So when you go to the voting booth on Tuesday, you're going to see my name on the ballot. I do not want your vote. I want you to vote for Donald Trump. The only way I'm going to go to Washington is if we get Donald Trump elected. And that's the only way we're going to fix this catastrophe that is impacting our children, this chronic disease epidemic. When I was a 10-year-old boy, my uncle was president of the United States, and 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, 60% do. When my uncle was president, we spent 0 on chronic disease in this country. There wasn't even medications for any chronic diseases. Today, we spend $4.3 trillion every year. It's 5 times our military budget. It is bankrupting our country. It is hurting our national security. 77% of American children cannot qualify for military service because of a chronic disease diagnosis. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans were obese. Today, 50% of our children are obese. And this isn't true in other countries. In other countries, it's the same as it was then. In Japan, 3% of the people are obese. It's impacting our country because we're mass poisoning ourselves, and we're poisoning our children. There's 1,000 ingredients in our food that are illegal in Europe. And the problem is not those ingredients. The problem is the corruption in Washington, D.C., the capture of our agencies. And the only president who's going to clean that up is Donald J. Trump. We have the sickest children in the world. When I was a kid, the autism rates, and today in my generation, 70-year-old men, 1 in 10,000 of us has autism. In my children's generation, it's 1 in every 34 children, 1 in every 24 in California. When I was a kid, juvenile diabetes was unknown. The typical pediatrician would see 1 case of diabetes in his entire career, a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 children who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. We are killing our kids. 40% of our kids are on antidepressants. The sperm counts have dropped 50%. Testosterone levels have dropped 50%. American girls are reaching puberty at 10 to 13 years old, 6 years younger than they were a generation ago. We are destroying these children. I had 11 brothers and sisters. I had 70 first cousins. I never knew anybody with a peanut allergy. Why do 5 of my kids have peanut allergies? Why do all of our kids have eczema and asthma and allergies? This is not normal. I know what a normal child looks like. And our kids today are injured and they're damaged. And they're damaged because we're being poisoned. And that comes from corruption. I started working on this issue 19 years ago. And for 19 years, I have got every morning, without one exception, I have said a prayer to God to put me in a position where I could end the chronic disease epidemic. And on August 23rd of this year, God sent me Donald J. Trump. And Donald Trump said to me in Milwaukee, we met for 2.5 hours, and he said, I want you to join my campaign and unify our efforts, and I'm going to end the foreign wars, the addiction to war. The $200 billion that we sent to Ukraine, we're going to spend it here in the United States. And he told me, we're going to end the censorship. We're going to end the surveillance. We're going to end the weaponization of our enforcement agencies against the American people. And he knew that my uncle, Ted Kennedy, wrote Title IX to make sure that women's sports are protected in schools. And he said, we're going to end the efforts of the Democratic Party, the war that they're making on women's sports in schools. And he said, we're going to end the chronic disease epidemic, and we are going to make America healthy again. Oh, don't you want a president who's going to get the toxins out of our food? Oh, you want a president who's going to end the corruption in Washington, D.C.? And don't you want a president who's going to end all the foreign wars that are sucking away our money and our... And don't you want a president who's going to end the censorship, end the surveillance, and protect the Constitution of the United States? And don't you want a president who's going to make this a free country again, where we treasure our liberties? A president who's going to make America healthy again. A president who's going to make America great again. And let's go to the polls on Tuesday and deliver a landslide for Donald J. Trump. Thank you all very much. Thank you, MAGA. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I smell a landslide on Tuesday. Oh, I've been on the road for 19 months now. And a little over thank you. Thank you, MAGA. I lost a lot of friends and a lot of family, but I have a much bigger family now. We're all held together by blood and by DNA, and that is our basic relationships in our lives. But the most important relationships come from shared values. And everybody in this auditorium shares the value. They love this country and they love freedom. And they love our Bill of Rights and our Constitution. And I saw those things in danger in a very acute way during the COVID pandemic. And that is one of the principal reasons that I made the decision 19 months ago to run for President of the United States. And then a little over a year ago, I left the Democratic Party. That was a difficult decision for me because the Democratic Party was the home for me, that it was incomprehensible to me that I would ever leave it. My great-great-grandparents came over here, all of them, in 1848 during the height of the potato famine. They landed on the docks of Boston, penniless, and they were met there by the Democratic Party, and the party took care of them. It found them homes, it found them jobs, it located them in communities, it was where their churches were, and it gave them a sense of value and community and a love for this country. And my great-grandfather, Honey Fitz, was the first Irish Catholic mayor of Boston. His contemporary, Patrick Kennedy, was a state senator and a political boss in Boston. My uncle, John.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. We are currently watching top moment of RFK Jr. Trump speak for Secretary of for HHS. And then yeah. All right. Let's keep watching and enjoy the show.
John Kennedy was the first Irish Catholic president. My uncle Ted Kennedy was the second longest serving member of the United States Senate. My father was a U.S. Senator and Attorney General and died running for President of the United States. And it was inconceivable to me that I would ever leave the Democratic Party. But I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. The Democratic Party that I grew up with was the party of peace. It was the party of civil rights and constitutional rights, and particularly freedom of speech. It was the party that had skepticism toward the CIA and the national security state. It was the party that was also skeptical of Wall Street and the corporate domination of American democracy. It was the party of women's rights. My uncle, Ted Kennedy, wrote Title IX to make sure that women could play sports in college. And it was the party of democracy. It was the party that fought hard to make sure that every American had the right to vote for the candidate that they chose to vote for. Today's Democratic Party is the party of war. It's the party of Dick Cheney. It's the party of John Bolton. These were the people who lied us into the Iraq War, the greatest foreign policy cataclysm in American history. These are the men who wrote the Patriot Act that introduced the surveillance state and gave the CIA permission to spy on Americans, to propagandize Americans. It's the party that is trying to dismantle Title IX and let men play women's sports. The party I grew up with was the party of cops and firefighters and working people. And now, that's the Republican Party. The Democratic Party today is no longer the party that is skeptical of the CIA. The CIA and the neocons wrote Kamala Harris's speech at the Democratic Convention, the most bellicose, pugnacious speech that we've ever seen at a Democratic Convention. Before she went on, she was immediately preceded by a former CIA director. This would be unthinkable in the Democratic Party I grew up in. They've become the party of the swamp. They've become the party of Wall Street, of big tech, of big data, of big pharma, of big ag, big chemical, and the military-industrial complex. And their party not of civil rights, but of division that is tearing our country apart. And so I made a decision to run for president 19 months ago. A little over a year ago, I left the Democratic Party for all of those reasons. And then in August of this year, President Trump called me on August 23rd, immediately after his shooting at Butler. He called me 3 hours later on the telephone, and he asked me to meet with him the next day in Milwaukee. and we had a 2.5-hour meeting then and a number of subsequent meetings. And during those meetings, he urged me to unify our parties and to work with him to reclaim the values that Robert Kennedy stood for, that John Kennedy stood for. He said he wanted to end the forever wars and bring that $200 billion that we've sent to the Ukraine home to rebuild America. He told me that he wanted to end the censorship and end the surveillance and the propaganda. And that he wanted to put an end to the weaponization of law enforcement agencies against the American political system. And that he wanted to end this corrupt merger of state and corporate power that has turned our regulatory agencies predatory against the American public. And he said that he wanted to make America healthy again. And end the chronic disease epidemic that is destroying our children. And that is an existential threat to our nation. When my uncle was president and I was a 10-year-old boy, the rate of chronic disease in this country was 6%. Today, it's 60%. When my uncle was president, we spent zero on chronic disease in this country. There were no drugs to treat it. Today, we spend $4.3 trillion. $4.3 trillion, that's 5 times our military budget. It's the largest cost to our nation, and it is bankrupting us. And it is destroying us morally. Because we are betraying our children by letting these industries poison them. The rate of obesity at that time was 3%. Today, it's 50% in our children. And 74% of Americans are obese or overweight. Well, we didn't suddenly become lazy and gluttonous. We are being mass poisoned by corrupt industry. In Japan, where they don't have this kind of corruption, the obesity rate is 3%. That's what it's supposed to be, 3%. It's not supposed to be 50%, and this is a national security threat. 77% of American kids are no longer qualified for military service because of chronic disease diagnoses. And what are these diseases? They're obesity, they're neurodevelopment disorders, and I'm going to list some of them because I'm a 70-year-old man. And when I was a boy, I never heard of any of these diseases because nobody had them. You know, I had 11 siblings. I had about 70 first cousins. And I didn't know anybody with ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, sleep disorders, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, or autism. The autism rate in my generation today in 70-year-old men is 1 in 10,000. The autism rate in our children is 1 in 34. In California, as Callie just said, it's 1 in 24. And the rate in boys is much higher. We also saw this explosion of autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's disease and lupus and juvenile diabetes, all of these exotic diseases that we never heard of as a kid. The diabetes rate when I was a kid was effectively 0. A typical pediatrician, when I was a young boy, would see one case of diabetes in his lifetime, in his career, a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 children who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's saying anything. Nobody is recognizing that we are being mass poisoned by big pharma and big food. And all these allergic diseases that suddenly appeared. I never knew a kid anywhere in any of the schools that I went to that had a peanut allergy or food allergies or eczema. My brother had asthma, and he was told by his doctor there will never be a cure for asthma because it's so rare that nobody will ever study it. Today, 1 out of every 8 black children in America's cities has asthma. What is happening to our children? And I saw this happening, and I began writing about it, and the media rose up and silenced me in 2005. And nobody would talk about it. The doctors wouldn't talk about it. The pediatricians wouldn't talk about it. The scientists, the government officials. And people warned me, if you keep talking about this, you're going to destroy your career. And I was stunned by this. And for 19 years, since 2005, I spend 30 minutes praying every day when I get out of bed. And my prayer is this. I ask God for 19 years to put me in a position where I could end the chronic disease epidemic and bring health back to our children. And in August, God sent me Donald Trump. Now, we're 5 days out from an election, and it's an election that we are certain to win. If every vote is counted, if all the votes are counted, we're going to win this election. Oh, now, the medical industrial complex. And I want to remind you of this. I've been told to go on a little longer because President Trump is not yet in the building. You know, I was not going to tell you this. When I was 7 years old, I went to the inauguration of my uncle as president in Washington, D.C. And 3 days before that, President Eisenhower, the outgoing president, made what today we have to regard as the most important speech in American history. And it was the speech where he told Americans that they should be in fear of the emergence of a military-industrial complex. that would erode our democracy, that would subvert our democratic institutions, that would steal our money and steal our resources and bankrupt the middle class in this country and make us weak in the long run. And I urge you to go look at that speech, because after he talks about the military-industrial complex, he says, and by the way, just as bad is the medical-industrial complex, which will pervert science, which will lie to the public, which will turn science to serve industrial and corporate interests, the mercantile ambitions of big corporations. Oh. Oh. As soon as Donald Trump started talking about giving me the power, he asked me to do three things. He asked me to root out the corruption. And end the conflicts of interest in our regulatory agencies. And end this corporate capture that has turned our regulatory agencies into sock puppets of the industries they're supposed to regulate. And he asked me to restore the tradition of gold standard, empirically based, evidence-based science and medicine in our regulatory agencies. And to restore the transparency so that these agencies must stop hiding science from us when it clashes with the commercial ambitions of the pharmaceutical industry. And he doesn't want me to take vaccines away from people. If you want to take a vaccine, you ought to be able to take it. We believe in free choice in this country. Oh, you ought to know the risks and benefits of everything you take. And we need good science for that. And we need informed consent. And he asked me to do that, and then he asked me to end the chronic disease epidemic in this country. And he said, I want to see results, measurable results, in the diminishment of chronic disease within 2 years. And I said, Mr. President, I will do that. This has caused a lot of aggravation and apoplexy among a certain class of the medical elites. And today, the Washington Post and NBC and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal all did articles talking about what a catastrophe it's going to be if I get anywhere near the medical establishment. And I read the articles because I wanted to see the names of the people who were denouncing me. And every one of them is on the pharma payroll. These are what the media calls experts. But these are the same experts that made us the sickest country in the history of the world. Whatever they're doing is not working. We had during this country, these are the guys who gave us the COVID countermeasures, which shut down our schools, which closed our churches, which shut down 3.3 million businesses in this country. All the little businesses, and they left open the Walmarts and Facebook and all of the big people who were cashing in on the pandemic. And these are the people who are treating disease. For them, for these people, the most valuable asset in America is a sick child. They don't want your child dead. They want him sick for life. Then he's dependent on their products. And the more statins they prescribe for heart disease, the more heart disease goes up. The more metformin they prescribe for diabetes, the more diabetes we have. The more antidepressants they prescribe, the more people we have who are depressed. The more Ambien they prescribe, the more insomnia there is. The more opioids they prescribe, the more pain there is. The more Viagra they prescribe, the higher ED goes. And so these drugs, their formula, this pharmaceutical paradigm, is not working. And President Trump wants to do something different. And somebody called me, one of the anchors of ABC today, and I had an off-the-record discussion with him. And he said, there's so much division in this country. And I said, that's because you're causing it. My nephew, who's traveled with me for 19 months, he's my wife Cheryl's nephew, and he's been working for me for 19 months and traveled everywhere with me, and he's met President Trump many times now. And he said to me today, he said, everybody who's met President Trump loves President Trump. He said, you can't help but love him. So why does half of America hate him? They haven't met him, and the media is telling them to hate him. And I said this. I said, you're demonizing him, you're vilifying him, you're calling us garbage, you're calling him Hitler, you're calling him a fascist, and of course people are going to hate him. And I said, and by the way, you're writing all these articles condemning me coming into Washington, dismantling the pharmaceutical paradigm. Where are you getting your salary? From pharma. And he said, we tell both sides of the story. And I said, no, you don't. And he said, well, President Trump is saying radical things. I said, like what? He said he's going to pull CBS's license. And I said he ought to pull CBS's license. CBS doesn't own the airwaves. We do. The people of the United States own the airwaves. CBS is licensed to use the airwaves, but only for a public purpose, to advance the public benefit. We have a doctrine in this country called the Fairness Doctrine that says if you're licensed to own a network, you got to tell the news at least once a day, and you got to be fair to both sides. And I said to this guy, I said, you know, I was running for 19 months. When Ross Perot ran in 1992 for 10 months, he did 34 live interviews on the airwaves, on the national networks. And I said, I did 4 in 19 months, and your network never let me on a single time. You're only telling one side of the story. And the only thing you'll report about Donald Trump is propaganda to make people despise him. And, you know, one of the things I'm going to advise Donald Trump to do in order to correct the chronic disease epidemic is to ban pharmaceutical advertising on TV. There's only 2 countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical advertising on the airwaves. One of them is New Zealand and the other is us. And we have the highest disease rate and we buy more drugs and they're more expensive than anywhere in the world. Italy spends about 1/6 that we spend on healthcare. And Italians live 7 years longer. So whatever they're doing does not work. And don't you want a president who is going to fix this country? Don't you want a president who's going to end the addiction to foreign wars? And don't you want a president who's going to end the censorship and surveillance and return freedom of speech to our country? And don't you want a president who's going to clean out the corruption and drain the swamp at the regulatory agencies? And get the chemicals out of our food and protect our children and restore their health and make America the healthiest country in the world, which it was when I was a kid. Don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again? And don't we deserve a president who will make America great again? Will you go to the polls on Tuesday and make sure that we all ride that big garbage truck to Washington, D.C.? Now I want to bring on my friend and one of my great heroes, Tucker Carlson. Thank you all very much.
Yes, y'all. We've heard from the Secretary of HHS, Trump speak. You know what time it is. Yes, it is currently 5:35 a.m. You guys are the best. We've been streaming for 3 hours and 16 minutes. And today's date is the 16th of November 2024. Some of you are going to work, some of you are going to sleep, some of you are going, who knows, bro? Who knows? However, double tap your screen twice and subscribe to the channel. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. Believe in God, guys. All right. The title for today, one more time, is Your Time is Limited. Create your own story. Okay? Create your own story, man. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now. Everybody's dealing with issues and, so many things going on, guys. Just stay focused on God. Stay consistent. And just believe God got you. All right? I love you guys. Thank you to the veterans in the chat. Thank you to the moderators in the chat. Mr. Busky, I see you. Everybody in the chat. Cooper, Zane, every single person. I guess the other moderators have gone to bed, but thank you so much to Mr. Busky, and thank you to the veterans in the chat. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Genesis is signing out. I love you guys.